once someone talks about their journey, what are the lessons that we can pick up from? And what are the adjustments that we need to make, right? So this is an opportunity for that. So I just want everybody to know. And the administration, you guys have done such an amazing job this year. And so walking into this knowing that we filed this hearing order in June because of all the issues that were happening towards the end of the school year, right? So know that this particular hearing was as a result of all of the issues that happened last year. And the issues still continue to persist, but now there's an opportunity for us to reset, okay? So in the spirit of that, I want everybody to breathe in and breathe out, because we're here for it, okay? All right, so now I'm gonna do the official opening, which is not part of the record. So good evening, everyone. For the record, my name is Julia Mejia, City Councilor at Large. I am the chair of the Boston City Committee on Government Accountability, Transparency, and Accessibility. This hearing is being recorded and it will be broadcasted on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, Verizon 964, and streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. We'll be taking public testimony at the end of the hearing. If you are interested in testifying here with us in the chamber, please make sure that you sign up in the sheet near the door. And if you are interested in testifying virtually, please email the Central Staff Liaison, Megan Kavanaugh, at megan.kavanaugh@boston.gov for the link. Written comments may also be sent to the committee at cccgata@boston.gov or to the Central Staff Liaison. Please keep in mind that any submitted comments will be made a part of the record and available to all counselors. I will be reading some of the public testimonies that we received into the record, just because I think it's important for us to uplift the voices of those who couldn't be here. So I'm switching things up just a little bit on that. So the subject of this hearing is Docket 0725, Order for a Hearing Regarding the Boston Public School Transportation System. This matter was sponsored by myself, Councilor Julia Mejia, Councilor Lara, and Councilor Aaron Flynn. My goodness, Aaron Murphy, and was referred to the committee on June 8th, 2022. Tonight we are leading with the community panel and then the administration. So normally the administration goes first and then we go to community. We felt we wanted to ground the conversation in people who are living the realities. So we're starting off with community, then we're going straight into the administration panel with providing an opportunity for my colleagues to ask questions to both. I'm gonna switch things up a little bit. And I already said I didn't want PowerPoint presentations, so if you have them, don't put them out, I'm just joking. We'll take your PowerPoints. This matter, tonight we are leading with, like as I mentioned, we'll then go into questions after both panels testify with the understanding that the administration has a hard stop at 7, so I'll ask my colleagues to ask the administration their round of questions first, and then we'll move to community panel questions. So there we go. We are on time. I am going to, in the interest of keeping things moving, I'm just going to read into the record that our office received a letter from Councilor Rorel, and I want to read his letter of absence into the record. It says, Dear Chair Mejia, Councilor Lara, and Councilor Murphy, and Councilor colleagues, I will unfortunately be unable to attend today's hearing, but I am grateful for the opportunity to ensure our students have safe, reliable transportation to and from school. Consistent attendance is critical. It impacts future earnings, reduces violence, and helps support families and communities. We cannot leave kids stranded, kids who would otherwise have chosen to be in class, nor can we leave parents stranded with little or no notice to make childcare plans. This is all more important as our days get shorter and children must often wait for their school bus in the dark. With apologies if these questions are repetitive, but I would like to ask the following. So this is some things for you all to consider. I'd like to see you already taking notes. Are buses delays and no-shows more prevalent in any specific neighborhoods? If so, which ones and why? What is the current protocol for alerting parents and students about delays? So those are two questions that he wants us to answer. And then he says, I look forward to learning more about the challenges our city faces and working with BPS, the administration, and my colleagues on the council to ensure our students can safely and reliably get to and from school. Thank you, Councilor Roral. And that's, oh, I got another letter of absence from at-large Councilor Rutzi Louis-Jean. Says, Dear Committee on Education, I regret to inform you that I will be unable to attend the Committee on Education's hearing on Docket 0725, order for a hearing regarding the Boston Public School transportation system. Transportation systems at Boston Public Schools have been struggling for more than a decade to run on time. It is imperative that students have safe and reliable and consistent transportation to and from school that does not distract from their educational journey. Recently, under a systemic improvement plan in partnership with the state, the BPS is mandated to attain at least a 95% on-time percentage of its buses to school each month. We know that late or absent buses not only result in learning loss for students who show up late, but that inconsistent transportation has small but serious harmful impacts that add up. My staff will be attending and I will be thoroughly reviewing the video, hearing minutes, and public testimony. Should you or any member of the public have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to my office directly at 617-635-4376 or at rutzi.louisjean@boston.gov. And those were the letters of absence from our colleagues. I'd like to acknowledge that we are joined here as well by our council president, Councilor Flynn. And in the interest of diving right in, I'm going to ask my colleagues if it's okay if we reserve our opening remarks. Is that okay? Sure. Great. I'll do the same. We'll start with our community panel. I know we have Leon virtually, but Leon, I'm going to go to you third. So we are going to start off with Shamia.
Are we?
Yes. And yes. Well, I will say you were one of the inspirations to accelerate holding this hearing sooner because of what you were experiencing.
I'm very loud on Twitter.
And so you were part of that inspiration, so that for you go first.
Okay, that's fine. I do have written testimony. I'm going to use it as a guide, but I'm going to basically just tell my story. I feel very grateful to be invited here tonight to tell my story. My story has moments of sunshine and moments of temper tantrums, so I'm going to be fair across the board. In telling my story, I know it may differ from what other parents experience, but I want to try to be as transparent as possible. I'll start with all my pain points and then talk about the bright spots because I do think, there is some good with the bad. So, good afternoon. My name is Shamia Wall, and I'm a mother of an autistic K1 BPS student in Dorchester, Massachusetts. If I were asked to give this same testimony a month ago when my emotions were running high, this would be a very different conversation. We've had issues with transportation since my daughter entered Boston Public Schools as a 3-year-old K0 student, which was last year. As a parent, I thought my biggest issue would be fearing that she'd be placed on the wrong bus or released at the wrong stop. This happened to me as a K1 student in Boston Public Schools. And I'm super old, so that was a while ago, but However, our issues are and continue to be reliability and communication. This year, after sending at least 4 emails that went unanswered, BPS told me that I should open tickets in their new portal. This portal is linked on their website, but the Where's My Bus app directs us to phone and email. Any parent can tell you reaching someone in the morning is like hitting the lottery. My issues are, as said, reliability and communication. So reliability, monitor issues. My student needs a monitor and has one in her IEP. Thankfully, she does have one now, consistently every day, which I'm grateful for. But for weeks at a time, I would get a robocall that said, the bus may or may not come because there's no monitor. But how does a parent operate when it's a toss-up as to whether or not the bus will show up? A transportation representative actually told me that on September 1st, 2022. I have a job too. It's flexible, but now post-pandemic, they want us back in the office. This year, my bus service for my child was so bad that I asked for a letter from transportation stating they couldn't provide services due to the lack of staffing, since that's what was explained to me, but this never happened. Being clear, VPS was putting me in a position where I'd have to choose whether to go to work and be late or ensure my child could attend school. I work outside this building, and I've probably been home for about 4 years. But now they're like, everybody in office, they're bullying us basically to come back into the office. And so when you have a child whose bus comes 8:15, 8:30, but your workday starts at 8 o'clock, it's like, and now the Massachusetts public transportation system is in crisis, so it's already taking me extra time to get to work. It's like, okay, well, do you stay home so you can at least get more out of your workday, or do you try to just, go to work? My mom is elderly. She puts my daughter on the bus. I can't leave her because if the bus doesn't come, I have to drive her to school, and my mom doesn't drive. So that's the kind of pickle that I was in earlier in this year and then last year. My second issue, communication. There are ad hoc issues which basically revolve around robocalls. If a robocall is sent at 6:30 in the morning saying the bus is late, an additional call won't arrive. So you don't know if it's 10 minutes, it'll say severely late, but is that like 20 minutes or is that like an hour? Most recently I had one isolated incident where it was an hour plus, but I didn't know that it would be that late. The week of September 26, 2022, I stopped receiving robocalls altogether when a bus couldn't pick up my child. Although I was getting multiple calls daily, where I feel like Boston Public Schools stocks parents' phones with notifications, I wasn't getting notifications around transportation. When I asked in the morning when I called transportation, they told me it was because my phone number was listed as a home number, and maybe that's why they didn't call. I was asked to call the Welcome Center. This year, her first morning driver was so frustrated with the lack of communication, and I'm guessing parents were giving her a hard time, and not having a monitor, that she told me that she was going to quit on Friday, the first 2 weeks of school. And she did. How unfortunate, because she was so nice, but then the bus issues piled up for me. So I go on, but I want to say after this time, I kind of hit a breaking point, which is when I got pretty loud on Twitter. And thankfully, the director of transportation and the mayor actually met with me to talk about my issues, and I haven't been having much issues since then. I can say that. We did have a transition from, I guess, covering driver to new driver, which was a little, I don't know if it was rocky. It was delightful to see the old driver transition to the new driver. They were both there. But the arrival time, I think the bus had gotten to like, a hiccup or something like that. So it's been very intermittent since BPS stepped in, I can say that. So I want to give credit where that's due. But overall, I feel like buses shouldn't be a burden to parents. I have to go to work. Last year, when I transported my child to and from school more than the district, but I had more flexibility last year. This year, I need to be in office, and I need my daughter's transportation to run on schedule. In early October, as mentioned, my daughter's bus had no monitor. In early October, my daughter's afternoon bus had no monitor. Afternoon bus issues are a different form of stress, in my opinion. I was on the phone with her homeroom teacher as she explained that she got approval from the parent to allow the child to ride the bus. I listened as this driver raised his voice, basically to the point of yelling, telling the teacher, policy is if a child needs a monitor and there isn't one, they can't ride. I said, well, policy is to notify the parents in advance when there's no monitor. It was 2:30 p.m. School dismissal starts at 2:15, really 2 o'clock, but 2:15. My child should have been walking through the gate at home by 2:30. But I was just receiving a call that there was no monitor and the driver refused to take my child home. My thoughts were, what if I didn't have a car? What if I didn't drive? Why does my child have to feel left behind as school clears out? Thankfully, I simply said, look, his attitude is gross. Don't put her on the bus. I'll be there in 10, and I picked her up. I'll say this. I'm a little bit less sensitive to her being left at school because she's kind of used to it, unfortunately. But last year, that was one of my biggest pain points. I felt like, she's autistic. She could not speak. She talks a mile a minute now, thank God for the blessing. But last year, my child was not conversational whatsoever. And so when you arrive at a school at 2:40 that starts dismissing at 2 o'clock, and it's literally your child and the secretary sitting there, you can't help but feel like if she's wondering why she's being left behind, right? So I was much more sensitive to that than I am this year. This year, my bus issues are mostly in the morning. I rarely have afternoon issues. But back to that afternoon bus driver, I'm still upset with him. I did submit a report, but frankly, I didn't want her on the bus with an adult that didn't want her to be there anyway. All notice for afternoon bus issues this year have come post-dismissal. Thankfully, it's only happened a few times, as I said. When I say a few, I mean like 1 or 2. I really haven't had issues there. Last year, I was getting a call 10 minutes before or after dismissal to pick up my child, and it was very regular. So much that now I only stay in the office for half a day. So I leave work at noon to get home around 1:15 so that I can be there just in case I need to pick her up. I just need to compensate where transportation may lack, but I thank God for having a flexible employer. Late service, and this is the follow. Late service and missing buses stress parents out, but children suffer too. Last week, when her bus didn't come and I dropped her at school, I asked that she be given breakfast at drop-off. It was about 9 a.m. School begins at 8:15. I was told, oh, that's over. Breakfast ends at 8:30. I responded, if she can't eat, we were leaving. So to be clear, I was told that twice. The woman who opened the door said she can't have breakfast, and I walked right by her into the school lobby, and I was like, she needs to eat. And then I was told again that they weren't feeding her. And that's when I said, if she can't eat, I'm taking her home. And thankfully they agreed to feed her, but she's 4. Are these babies sitting in school all morning with no food when the bus is late? Because they already sat outside a long time waiting for the bus. I understand, because I'm on Twitter, that the general consensus is, well, feed your child in the morning. I have no problem feeding my child in the morning. But there's also food scarcity. What about children that have food issues at home, right? If I'm outside at 7:55 for a bus that comes at 8:15, but sometimes comes at 8:30, my child is outside for an hour, right? And maybe I'm not feeding her because I'm expecting her to go to school and eat, right? There's all those things. I don't think this is a transportation issue. I think this is a BPS issue. You need to feed these kids, right? If a child is 10, maybe there's a little bit more flexibility, right? They can sit in school, they can deal with their stomach grumbling. They're 4 and 3 years old. If they're getting to school late, feed them, period. It shouldn't be, I see reports on her daily log, oh, she had a rough morning, and now in hindsight, since this just happened last week, I have to wonder, well, I wonder if she was hungry that day, right? Boston Public Schools should be feeding these kids. It should never be their late breakfast is over. Like, your teachers, right? You're supposed to care for these kids like their parents would. If a child gets home and you already know, if a child gets to school late and you know it's the bus, you should be saying, are you hungry? I shouldn't have to put up a fight for you to feed my child, right? So, in closing, I will say that my experience with BPS transportation is not all negative. I forgot to mention something. So that same day that I had to fight for her to go to school was pajama day at school, and she missed class pictures. And my mother is literally still on a rampage about it because for all the pictures she's left out. So, these kids are missing out when they're late for school. But I'll say in closing that my experience with transportation has not been all negative. Last year, her even bus monitor was an absolute breath of fresh air. I always talk about him. I wish I knew his name. He was young. He should be the model employee and train others. His kindness and gentleness didn't go unnoticed even by school staff. In fact, for Christmas, they had a gift for him. But he had caught COVID, so he was out for like a month. But he was amazing. This year, though the morning bus makes me fight the urge to have temper tantrums, the staff, even revolving, has been amazing. The afternoon bus, amazing people. It just seems to be an issue of poor process. Last year, neither the morning or afternoon buses did me any favors. This year, we mainly have morning issues, so I guess that's progress, right? I'm kidding. As a parent, I'm asking for service to be reliable and for the district to effectively communicate when there's an issue, and it's not asking a lot. We're not setting the benchmark, unbelievably high. I don't think we can get a more basic requirement than that. What is it going to take to get there? I'm not sure. In the interim, parents and children are the ones that suffer, and we deserve better.
We're going to move on to the next panel, only because there'll be some questions.
I'm not gonna
I'm just letting you know. Okay, so I'm going to go next to Chikari, you want to go next? So you are you are the program lead for Racial Equity and Access Program at REAP, the Massachusetts Advocates for Children. I'm really excited that you are here with us because I think the perspective that you are able to provide will help us understand the impact on learning and families. You have the floor. And I'm going to time you. I didn't time Shamia. I had to, but I'm gonna time y'all because y'all can go on here. 7 minutes. Go.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Before I introduce myself, I want to thank City Council for convening this hearing. I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in this panel, and I look forward to collaborating on a pathway forward. My name is Jakira Rogers, and I work with Massachusetts Advocates for Children, also known as MAC. I lead MAC's work focused on Boston Public School, and I serve as a program lead for MAC's Racial Equity and Access Program, REAP. REAP works collaboratively to transform K-12 education into a racially equitable system in Boston. Before I dive in, I want to emphasize that BPS transportation concerns are not new. The district's inability to provide equitable, reliable, and consistent transportation to all students is a systemic issue, a systemic failure to all students and families impacted. BPS has a long-standing history of struggling to address the educational needs of students with disabilities, in addition to also struggling to even get those students into the classroom. The district must do better for our vulnerable learners. Those in power within BPS, the City of Boston, and DESE, along with others, must address the exclusion of Black and Latinx students within Boston Public Schools. When I say exclusion, I'm referring to the multiple ways in which Black and Latinx students with disabilities are pushed out of school and away from their education. There are long-standing inequities that disproportionately harm our Black and Latinx learners, many of which also have disabilities. When is the district going to address the structural racism that segregates these students and keeps them away from their education? It's not a secret who inadequate transportation disproportionately impacts. These inequities compromise the rights of Black and brown children by denying them access to a free and appropriate education, also known as FAPE, as guaranteed by law. While inadequate transportation directly impacts all BPS students and BPS families, it disproportionately impacts Black and brown families, low-income families, immigrant families, and multilingual families. Transportation is not just about school buses. It's about access to education and access to a free and appropriate education. That's what all students deserve, yet students with disabilities continue to be inadequately served. Many children who receive special education services are not receiving the services that they are legally entitled to through their IEP. IEP refers to a student's individualized education program, which may include services and supports for students with disabilities. Students who should be receiving door-to-door services and other special education services and supports need to be in the classroom in order to make effective progress. Yet, they are missing hours of school and being denied a free and appropriate education on a consistent basis. FAPE is not contingent on staffing shortages, contract negotiations, lack of adequate training, or hiring freezes. I would like to highlight various demands that are associated with this structural inequity. Ensure effective communication. The district requests that families be patient with them, while some families are losing their jobs, running late for work, leaving early to pick up their child, and losing days and often hours of conversation due to the district's inability to provide consistent transportation and special education services. The district needs to be transparent about what is possible, given the current systems and processes in place. BPS must ensure that all families, including multilingual families, have access to notifications regarding transportation disruption in their primary language, and that language access is not a barrier when a family wants to contact the transportation department or the Office of Special Education when questions or concerns arise. Provide authentic community engagement. When it comes to decision making, families are not seen as solution seekers. Decisions are made top down, and families and students are at the bottom. The district makes decisions for families, not with families. The district must ensure that all families, including multilingual families, are able to meaningfully contribute to the solution-making process. Address disparities within special education services. Inadequate transportation impacts all students, but what about students with disabilities who are legally entitled to transportation and related services? As noted before, it's not just a matter of getting to school, it's a matter of receiving services. Multiple families who support students in special education are not receiving transportation, door-to-door service, being provided bus monitors that are outlined in their IEP. Families should not have to fight for what they are legally entitled to through their child's IEP. Students with disabilities are disproportionately and systemically deprived of transportation services is a clear violation of state and federal law. Lastly, address socioeconomic concerns. Address the socioeconomic barriers that force low-income families to pay for transportation upfront and then seek reimbursement from the district when BPS cannot provide the required transportation. The financial burden, which disproportionately impacts low-income families, has to stop. The racist practices and policies must also stop. Families must have Social Security numbers to be reimbursed because the current reimbursement process requires that families be registered as an independent contractor or vendor. Families are not required to have a Social Security number when they're enrolling their student in school. So this process should not require families to have a Social Security number to be reimbursed. The academic improvement that the district seeks must begin with ensuring that students can be physically present. School must be accessible to all. We will not stop until every child can get to school each and every day. Thank you.
And you have 4 seconds, but that's it. But no, that was great. You made your time. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. I am going to go virtual, as I promised I would. I just wanted to quickly introduce Leon Rivera. If you don't know him, you should. He's very active and a very active parent, really worked with our office in organizing making sure that parents were heard and really helped us do the work. And so he has been in the front lines of this issue, and I'm really happy that he is joining us as a panelist. Leon, you have the virtual floor.
Yes, I'm here.
And I'm gonna put you on a timer. No matter how much love you think I just gave you, you're still also gonna get 7 minutes, okay?
Hey, that's more than enough. We usually get 2 minutes, so this is great.
All right,
I'm not sure why my camera's not working, but
Oh, can we get him on camera, please, before we start?
I think it's my camera, my laptop.
Oh, your
Okay,
camera's
so-
not working. Okay.
Thank you for having me, folks. My name is Leon Rivera. I'm a BPS parent. I'm also a C-Plan organizer. If you're not familiar with C-Plan, it's a parent-led advocacy organization that seeks to inform, inspire, and empower parents to advocate for more equitable education for their children. You may have known me, I'm very vocal on the massing CAS issue, but today we're here to talk about BPS transportation, which is something that's impacted many families. So as an organizer, I'm always trying to be resourceful in my community with families. I'm usually running into a lot of BPS families, and I'm usually trying to help these folks navigate through the BPS system. As we are all familiar with, every year we have this issue with BPS transportation. It seems like it just never goes away for some folks. So what we did this year, once September showed up, we noticed that the trend was coming back. A lot of parents on social media, Facebook, Twitter, upset about late buses, no shows, no monitors. So what we decided to do a couple of weeks ago was create a Google Doc form where we started taking in these complaints. So anytime we see something, we're very grassroots. So especially me, I like to keep it local. So what we did was we started reaching out to folks directly on Twitter, Facebook, and just ask, like, hey, what's going on? Has this been going on for a while? Is it new? Just to see if the information is matching, because we usually hear BPS transportation is doing a lot of improvements and things are getting better, but we wanted to see what the story was. So I want to share some of the testimonies from some of the parents, some of the complaints that we got. So some over here, we'll start with Up Academy Holland. Mom says, I can never track my child's bus through the app. Sometimes it shows the bus at my child's school, and when I call transportation, it's somewhere else. Sometimes they themselves have trouble getting a hold of the driver to verify if my child is on the bus. This means that sometimes a parent will call the department and the department itself won't know if the child is on the bus, which is very scary because parents are depending on us to provide secure transportation. So I have another parent here. In the last 2 weeks, my daughter has made it to school on time 3 times. I have my daughter ready every day on time, and this causes me to be late to work. My manager has been working with me, but he can only do so much. Please fix this. BTU Pilot School. Inconsistent and inaccurate information. Received text, bus will be late, bus never shows up. Orchard Gardens. I have called for bus stop changes, waiting for weeks and no answer. When I call, they tell me I have to wait. Mom from the Devon. My child's bus is always missing a monitor, and I'm concerned about safety due to a number of incidents on the bus. Now, this is another mom that I have worked with directly. Mom has a daughter in a wheelchair. She's autistic. Mom is also in recovery. When the bus is late, this throws off the child's schedule for the rest of the day. It throws off mom's schedule because mom has certain appointments she has to make up every day. So she's also struggling herself on her path due to this transportation issue. So we got all this data. I'm pretty sure we've heard it before. Now, as we ask parents, what do you want to see differently? Some of the frustrations with the BPS, the call center, right now we have, I think it's like a handful of folks responsible for over 22,000 students being transported. Those numbers don't add up. And it's so funny, I'm getting let me see a text. Yep, another text from a parent. But 22,000 students, a handful of call center folks. It just doesn't make sense. As the first panelist expressed, morning time you call, you're on hold for hours because there's a number of parents on queue for the same issue. So we've come up with a few ideas from parents that have submitted this. In terms of the call center, we definitely need to increase the call center folks. We need more people to be able to respond online. I posted earlier today, I made a phone call today to test the online feature. I was on hold for over 30 minutes. No one showed up to answer. So a few other, and in terms of the BPS, the monitor issue, the shortage in the drivers, I think we can see some better outreach efforts. We would like to see outreach flyers in multiple languages at every BPS school, every front door, every main office, every sign-in area. We would like to see bi-weekly mass text for BPS families, reminding them of available positions in BPS transportation. We also think you guys can do pop-up job fairs at different schools. 1 week you choose Dorchester, 1 week you choose Roxbury, 1 week you choose Mattapan. This way you're reaching out to different folks. These are things we can do. These are steps we can take actually starting tomorrow to be able to bring some relief to families. So that's all I have. I just wanted to highlight, take the time to show you guys what families are going through throughout the district. I'm glad to see you guys together here, working on something together. And many organizations are here, just like Jakara, myself from C-Plan are here to help to get this work forward. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to Becky, who is is a lawyer with the Greater Boston Legal Services. We spoke a week or two ago, and really excited that you decided to join us on this panel. I'm going to set the alarm. You now have the floor.
Everyone has been on time, and I'm afraid that I tend to go over, so I'm glad that's going to go off on me. Thank you, City Councilor Mejia, for inviting me, and I really want to thank the parents that showed up tonight. at night, after school. We really appreciate it. And thank you, BPS, for showing up to the conversation. We all know that Boston Public Schools transportation, this isn't a new issue. We know that there are a bunch of systemic reasons that doing this service is really hard. So I just kind of want to acknowledge that up front. I wouldn't want to run BPS transportation. It's a hard job. So a little background on me. I'm an attorney at Greater Boston Legal Services. We're a legal aid organization, so we assist some of Greater Boston's poorest and most vulnerable families. We help them get basic life necessities through legal representation. My project is the School to Prison Pipeline Intervention Project. So primarily my job every day should be trying to disrupt systems that drive students of color and students with disabilities out of school and into repeated incarceration. School discipline, as many know, disproportionately impacts students of color, students with disabilities, and low-income students, causing them to miss class time and making them drop out at higher rates than their peers. So fundamentally, my project is about ensuring that students have equitable access to their education and that they're able to make it through high school, graduate. It's about keeping students in class with appropriate supports so that they're not getting excluded. And so that's where my work has run into the issue of transportation. It's a key service that keeps students in school. It ensures that all Boston students could have equitable access to their educations. But since the inception of the project, well before my time at GBLS, our clients have struggled year after year with consistent access to their required transportation services. Most of our clients are students on IEPs who, as Jakira said, have legal entitlements to the services that they're struggling to access. So you may wonder, who are my clients? What are their problems? I want to talk about that a little today. My clients are all students from low-income families in Greater Boston, primarily Boston's public and charter schools. My project serves a majority students of color, largely Black and Latinx students. Most of my students are students with disabilities, and many have severe mental health needs, so we're working also on access to community mental health supports. Roughly 50% of my current clients have experienced issues with transportation within the last school year. Most of my students that I'm talking about are students of color, and all of them are students with disabilities. At the start of the school year, my project was flooded with calls from families, from community mental health providers, and from other attorneys who work in other areas of law, doing poverty law services, asking what to do when students were left at home without their transportation in Boston. So many of my cases were actually referred to me by my colleagues who had been working with clients, had suggested, had looked up themselves, try calling this helpline number, try calling that helpline number. And when parents were unable to solve the problems themselves, then the attorney had to refer the case to me so that they could get access to an advocate to help them access these services. As I'll discuss more later, I can only report anecdotally that these problems are systemic inequities and that it's disproportionately impacting the communities that I'm talking about, that I serve. But one big ask that I would have is that we get access to disaggregated data so that we know what is the actual impact of uncovered routes, of late routes. Is that Black students, Latinx students, is that students of color, low-income students, homeless students, English learners? Who is this impacting? Because I actually don't think we have access to that disaggregated data. And I know that in 2022, DESE demanded access to that data as well. And so what are the problems that I've been seeing? The first and the most apparent issue that I've come across is that without consistent and appropriate transportation services, the students that we represent are arriving late to school, or they're unable to get to school altogether, missing out on critical education time, and disrupting the student and the entire family's lives. I think these parents are giving you accurate depictions of what that can mean. It's really you can see the chain of things that happen when the student is an hour late, misses a whole day. So for example, many of my clients have missed hours, days, and in one case this year, a month of their education because the parent wasn't able to transport the child or didn't know about access to reimbursement. And so for students with disabilities, which is most of my clients, they're deprived of the services that they're legally entitled to, creating a whole other problem at BPS having to deal with how do we, when we don't have full staff, actually give those children compensatory services for the days they're missing. So for many BPS students, they're missing out on education without any remedy though. For those special education students, if you miss a month of school, often the school will work with you to figure out what to do. But if you're missing an hour, how do you compensate for that in a child's education? So we really need to address this issue up front and figure out how to get these kids to school on time. How do you compensate for a kid that missed their breakfast that day? That's not necessarily a legal entitlement. So we really need to work as a community to figure out how to serve these children. Here's a quote from a GBLS client that texted another advocate when their bus was late. Today was the first day of summer school for Joshua, a made-up name, and the bus never showed up. I had to take him in an Uber after waiting for so long. He got anxious to go to school, and when he gets impatient, he throws tantrums, becomes violent and aggressive, and it's too much for me to go through. I can't even trust the transportation during the regular year. Either the bus doesn't pick him up in the morning, or his school calls to tell me that I have to pick him up because there are no buses available to bring him. I'm beyond frustrated. And just days later, that same parent had to text again and say, another day without a bus. I had to call to find out this morning. No one even bothered to call me and let the parents know. This is ridiculous. I'm so frustrated because I don't know how this can happen. It seems like it's always my son's bus. I have to call ahead of time every morning, and yesterday, because I called, they did send a bus for Joshua. I can't keep taking his punches and screams in the morning over this. So the impact on families and students I thought was really accurately captured by that parent, especially these students with disabilities. Parents are dealing with their children who are getting angry, who are getting avoidant or dysregulated. My clients have refused school, hurt themselves, hurt their parents when their schedules are disrupted like this. We've talked about the inconsistent communication on these issues. One other issue I want to highlight that I know BPS is working on right now to address is that parents were paying out of pocket. One of my caregivers, a Haitian mother, I will finish really soon. Her child missed 12 days and she drained her bank account, Ubering her child to and from school because the school told me there's no option to get payment in advance to get that child to school. So she overdrew her bank account, Ubering her child to and from school, and then it takes weeks to get reimbursed. But she said, I can't have my child not in school this week. That's just not an option for me. My child needs an education. So I think that the parents and Jakira, everyone here today, is showing up to the table. We really want to address these broad-ranging impacts of this issue, and we look forward to working with you all on it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You know, one of the reasons why when we called this hearing to order, because it was titled the Boston Public Schools Bus Transportation Hearing, you know, there was an assumption that we just wanted to hear from the Transportation Department, and I specifically asked to invite someone from special education because I do see that these two issues are interconnected and you can't have one conversation without having all the players here. So I'm really excited that we're gonna have a real conversation around how these two departments can help support each other, and what are some of the things that you're hearing and learning, and maybe some things that you have already heard, and some ideas and things that you're doing to address some of these concerns. So thank you for that.
Can I say one sentence I forgot to mention?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight, I forgot, for a lot of most people don't realize how broad the issue is. It's like Boston Public Charter and out-of-district schools use this transportation system. So I wanted to be clear, my clients aren't all BPS-specific students.
Yes, thank you for that. So I'm going to go to our last community panelist, another parent. Siri, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Siri Morley, and I live in Jamaica Plain. I'm here to speak about my family's experience using BPS buses for our 5-year-old son, Indigo, who is a new K2 student at the Haley. He requires door-to-door transportation and a safety harness because of his IEP. In our initial IEP meeting last spring, we were told that the bus would have a monitor who would buckle him in, and we're assured that this is not the regular school bus that you're imagining. Someone will be there to help him. Understandably, hearing all the reports from the news and variety of parents, we had trepidation about BPS transportation even last year. We were very happy to receive a placement at the Haley School with an IEP. We felt especially confident knowing that the Haley prioritizes inclusion. This was important to us because our son was seen as a problem at the first preschool he attended because the school wasn't prepared to support his neurodivergent needs. We saw a negative impact on his self-esteem and ability to learn and connect with peers. We went into this school year grateful that we would have the benefit of door-to-door transportation, since our son's ADHD and sensory processing disorder lead to a lack of safety awareness and poor impulse control, which makes being on a bus risky for all involved without him being buckled in. The first few weeks of school, the bus went well, as every morning he was greeted by a monitor who calmly sat him down and buckled him. Over the weeks, however, we began to notice less consistency with the monitor until suddenly she was either not there or not seating him. We later learned that she was on the bus to get to her other bus monitor job and was actually not supposed to be our bus monitor, but was just helping out when she could. One afternoon, our son's bus, for a reason I still don't understand, took a strange route home, backtracked to school, and ended up at our home 45 minutes later than usual. We never received a text or call about this delay. When the bus finally arrived, some older students were urgently yelling out the windows to me, saying that my son had been having disruptive behavior on the bus. I think they were trying to be helpful, but it's not children's job to monitor behavior. I looked towards the driver and I said, "Where's the bus monitor?" He and the kids, which was notable to me, all in unison said, "BPS doesn't have enough bus monitors. There isn't one." When my son and I debriefed on the ride, he shared that he had decided to sit in the back of the bus. Again, he's 5 years old, and a big kid was playing a trumpet, and it made him feel overwhelmed and nervous. So he started copying people's words and acting unsafe with his body as a response to this feeling of overwhelm. It was clear that the bus was in a chaotic state that day with a long, confusing route, and there was no adult who could safely manage the behavior of the children. I was very concerned about this from a safety perspective, but was also concerned about my son's self-esteem and how he would feel on the bus if all the older kids constantly were giving him negative feedback, and he was once again seen as a problem rather than a kid who has unique needs. Luckily, the night of that event, I found out about a community event for parents that Jakira luckily was organizing to talk about transportation challenges in BPS. And I was shocked and also somehow comforted to know I wasn't alone, but really shocked at the extent of problems that parents were experiencing, especially special ed kids. The next day I wrote to the Haley team about this challenge, and we were very fortunate to have their support in doing some troubleshooting with the resources they have. The team at the Haley tried to contact the transportation office and hit a dead end. In the words of our IEP coordinator there, she said, "I have no power and no one will listen to me there." Thankfully, the principal, Kathleen Sullivan, has found a teacher who made it his job to buckle in our son most afternoons. He is the special teacher for theater, so clearly not his job, but we are grateful. On our morning bus, we're lucky to have a bus driver who shows up on time and is calm and supports our son. The driver is worried because he said there are other children on the bus who are supposed to be buckled, and he cannot help them and also drive, and not all parents are able to be as involved as we are. The driver now gives us the time we need to make sure that Indigo is seated and buckled in a safe way. We often have to get on the bus and do this while all the other kids watch, which puts an extra spotlight on our son's needs. We've done our best within a broken system to ensure that most days he is buckled in, but it is adding extra stress to our mornings, extra demands on the school's teaching team, and importantly, is creating a lot of embarrassment for Indigo to have people specifically buckling him in rather than a monitor whose job it is to just get the kids settled on the bus. This is also affecting our family's mental health because after a very long journey to get him the support he needs to thrive in school and believing that it was being delivered by BPS, we suddenly felt like the rug was pulled out from under us and he didn't have what he needed. This created a lot of anxiety and stress. BPS Transportation knew that there were not enough drivers or enough monitors going into the school year, but they failed to communicate with parents about these gaps. We have never heard anything from the transportation department about the lack of monitors, ideas on how to address this, information on reimbursement if we take him to school ourselves, etc. We had no advance notice that his bus would not have a monitor and that fulfilling his IEP would be a problem because of this. We could have done a lot in advance to talk with our son about behavioral expectations on the bus if we knew that no one would be there to orient him. The rest of Indigo's IEP has been implemented well by the Haley. His experience at BPS is very positive at school. The weak link is the bus safety. I'm here because this is a legal contract that BPS created with us that the transportation department has not been able to fulfill. If we were not a family with the time and resources to advocate for our son, we would have to accept an unsafe transportation option. As you all, I'm sure, have seen from the Boston Globe article on special ed and transportation, our story is a relatively minor one compared to some of the extreme examples in the city. But there are also many students like Indigo with less obvious special needs that are slipping through the cracks with transportation. This is a systemic failure. I'm here not just to advocate for Indigo, but to advocate for an entire school district with hundreds, if not thousands, of kids like him whose needs are not being met. We're one of the most privileged families within BPS, and it's because of our privilege that we've been able to take all the time to ensure that he had a strong IEP in place to meet his needs. It's the same privilege that allows me the time to advocate for his needs with the school, troubleshoot solutions, and come here today to highlight the problems with BPS transportation. Caring for him and advocating for him has been nearly a full-time job. If I were a parent who had a full-time job right now, I'm currently not working, luckily, or any other number of restrictions on my time or resources, I would not have been able to do any of this. If it's so hard to get the needs of my son met, then what does that mean for the entire district? I think we've heard many examples of what it means. I'm not asking for a solution only for our family, although of course I would love Monitor to be on his bus, but for the entire school district. If BPS truly wants to be a school district that prioritizes inclusion for different learning needs, the transportation system has to be greatly improved. Our children cannot learn and thrive if we cannot count on supportive and safe transportation to and from school. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm glad that I opened up with community. I think it's important to help us ground this work. So I really do appreciate everyone leading with that, and for the administration for accommodating that. So thank you. I know that you have a hard stop at 7. Some of y'all do. I don't know if everybody does. But I wanted, what I'll do is you have 20 minutes within your panel. Each do 5 minutes. Or would love to give you an opportunity to decide for yourselves how you want to utilize your time. I see the PowerPoint presentation there. Who's gonna facilitate it? You? Del? Okay, so I'm gonna start the timer. And the special education, who's here from Chantel?
Assistant Director of Assistant Superintendent, of Special Education, Lauren Viviani is here.
Okay. Are you? Okay, great. I want to make sure you get a seat at the table, Lauren. You're very important to this conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So, Del, how long is your presentation?
Our presentation is about 10, max 15 minutes.
Okay, so Chantel, did we talk about the presentation? I'm curious about, before we dive into the presentation, because one of the things that I want to make sure is the best use of our time, and I'm curious what the presentation is going to reveal.
That's a good question. I can just like...
Give me high level. Before we go, I don't want to dive into a presentation because we might be able to better use our time. Just tell me what the presentation is before we dive into it.
The presentation gives an overview of the transportation operation. It dives into some performance metrics, areas where we're not meeting the moment like we should be, and some improvements that we're working on across the operations.
Okay. I'm just curious to my colleagues, is that, do you want to unpack that? Yeah. So I know it's 15, you said 10 to 15 minutes. If you could just, because there's other folks that need to speak here and you guys have 20 minutes as a panel, so I want to make sure that your whole entire time is not spent on the presentation.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Counselor. First, I would like to say good evening to everyone, to the counselors and our parents and families and advocates that's present today. My name is Delavan Stanislaus. I'm the Director of Transportation for Boston Public Schools. I'm joined here today by my Deputy Director of Transportation, Daniel Rosengard, my Assistant Director of the Bus Monitors Unit, Varsha Ramsamir, my Assistant Director of Contract Compliance and Fleet, Jacqueline Hayes, and Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, Lauren Viviani. For today's presentation, we're going to do a brief overview of the services Boston Public Schools Department of Transportation provides to parents and families. We're then going to do a deep dive into our performance metrics and key challenges. And at the end, we'll summarize our plans for continued improvements across the transportation operations. Next slide. I'd like to kick off the presentation with an overview of the BPS transportation operation. The Boston Public Schools Department of Transportation provides transportation services to students in the city of Boston who attend Boston Public Schools, private and parochial schools, charter schools, and out-of-district special education schools. Boston Public Schools provide home-to-school yellow bus services to 21,900 students across 221 schools on a daily basis. Students are transported on 600 buses, completing approximately 1,400 a.m. and 1,400 p.m. trips each day across the operations. In addition to home-to-school transportation, we provide yellow bus services for 2,500 athletics and field trips each school year. We also provide 35,000 M7 MBTA passes to Boston students in grades 7 through 12. 45% of the schools we service are non-BPS schools. This includes services provided to 45 charter and private parochial schools in Boston, as well as 53 out-of-district special education schools. 23% of the students we transport are to non-BPS schools. We provide specialized transportation in line with student needs in their IEPs, including approximately 6,000 students who receive door-to-door transportation services. 2,145 students receive bus monitors, including 481 students with one-to-one monitors requirements. The number of students with monitors is up 137% from school year 15-16 and 30% since last year. As mentioned, yellow bus service is provided by our contractor Transdev. Transdev maintains and operates our fleet of buses and also employs our bus drivers. We have over 720 total buses in our fleet, with 600 in use daily. Transdev currently employs about 885 total drivers, including 673 active drivers and 211 who are currently on leave or inactive or in training. For the start of the school year, following an agreement with the drivers' union, BPS is also working with outside vendors to transport students on up to 45 student transport vans temporarily on routes outside of the city of Boston. Next slide. Two important factors to highlight to understand the complexities of transportation operation are school assignments and bell times. Students in Boston Public Schools follow the home-based system for school assignment, while charter schools' assignments are citywide. This leads to many students being transported long distances across the city, increasing the number and length of bus routes. For example, over 57 schools have bus students from more than 15 different Boston zip codes. This means our buses run out of time before it runs out of space. Regarding bell times, there are 24 different AM bell times and 29 different PM bell times across the 221 schools we service. 63 schools also have a weekly early dismissal across 20 different early dismissal bell times. As a result, many buses service different schools in the AM versus PM, and in some cases, different schools based on the day of the week. Next slide.
I'm just curious how many more slides we have to go through.
4.
Oh, good job. Okay, Chantel, you made it happen, because you know I don't like PowerPoints. Go ahead, finish it up.
I'm now going to pass it over to our Deputy Director of Transportation, Dan Rosengard, who's going to do a deep dive into our performance metrics.
Thanks, Del. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to be here today, and in particularly to the community panel. Really appreciate everyone coming out and to be able to hear your voices and communicate. As Del mentioned, my name is Dan Rosengard. I am the Deputy Director of Transportation for BPS, and I also previously served as the Assistant Director of Customer Relations and School Support, and so a role that I'm still supporting as we work to hire. In this section, as Del mentioned, we're going to do a deep dive on performance as well as key challenges across customer service, bus on-time performance, and specialized transportation services for students with bus monitors. So I'll kick us off with communications. So next slide, please. Gonna kind of ignore the slide. I know we want to kind of go quickly, but just thinking about communications, we really want to think about kind of 3 things that make for good communications. How can we communicate proactively? How can we communicate in a timely manner? And how can we communicate in a way that is accessible for students and families? So our communications begin well before the start of the school year and continue throughout the year in an effort to be proactive, to make sure that students, that families and students understand processes for transportation, have their bus assignments, know how to track the bus using our Where's My School Bus site, know how to ride the bus safely, and get notified by robocall or text message anytime our team is aware of a late bus or other bus operations issue. And finally, making sure that they know how to reach BPS transportation if they need to. Thinking about timely communications, we have a team of just under 30 customer service staff members who support with real-time communications for families. This includes through responding to tickets in our support portal, responding to emails that come in, manning our online chat feature, and as many folks are familiar with, manning our transportation hotline. We have some stats on here, but I think it all boils down to the fact that we know that, especially at the start of the school year, wait times are far too long for families. That's something we know, it's something we own, it's something that we need to continue to work to improve on to make sure that families can reach us when they need to. And then finally, accessibility. I'll just quickly touch on 2 key pieces there, some of which the community member panelists mentioned as well. One super important thing is making sure that we have multilingual language capabilities. So we have an English queue as well as a Spanish queue on our hotline, and we work as hard as possible to have staff across all of the BPS languages. We also make sure that any outbound communications we send, whether they're robocalls or the start of school mailers, that those are translated across the BPS languages. And then the last piece that I'll quickly mention is we have all these communications channels that we want to help make things accessible for families. And on our end, what we do is we make sure they all flow into the same place, into one support portal, one ticketing system on our end, to ensure that families are receiving consistent, reliable responses and resolutions. We've had over 15,000 tickets come in through our various communications channels since the start of the school year. However, as folks alluded to, we know that, again, response times are not where they need to be. About 70% of tickets so far this year have been resolved within our service level agreement, and we need to get that number higher. So we deeply understand the importance of proactive, timely, accessible communications, And we are laser focused on continuing to decrease wait times and increasing multilingual and other accessible communications to meet family needs. If you go to the next slide, I'm now going to hand off to my colleague, Jackie Hayes.
Hi, my name is Jackie Hayes. Thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you to community members, and thank you especially to families who've come to share with us and speak with us about your experience of transportation services. I'll be very brief. There's two main metrics that we are focusing on when we're looking at the daily operations. On-time performance, or OTP. I think everyone's very familiar with that one.
I want people to hear you. What's the sense of you being here? Nobody can hear you. There you go. Can we light her up?
I'll start over really
there
quickly.
There we go.
My name's Jackie Hayes. Thank you for helping me function in this system. First, thank you to families, and thank you to our community partners who have had us here tonight to speak with us and share with us about your experiences and share ideas with us. There's two main metrics that we're looking at for daily operations. Those are on-time performance, or OTP, which I think people are pretty familiar with. The other major metric that we're looking at is daily uncovered trips. And I think hearing the personal experiences of some of the families here tonight and some of the clients that have been represented, that particularly comes through. The daily uncovered trips is a metric that we added last school year when we were facing the national driver shortage, which has continued into this year. And that metric and getting that metric down, we understand, is a precursor to be able to truly improve on-time performance. And fixing that metric looks like hiring a lot more drivers. So what we've been doing to work on that is we have been offering increased compensation, increased hiring bonuses, but most importantly, we've been building out for the last year a driver training school, so that drivers can come to us with a regular driver's license and we can take them all the way from there through full school bus certification. And I think that one of the ideas in particular raised tonight around having multilingual flyers available in all of our schools is something that we can definitely look at implementing so that we can increase recruiting for the driver candidate pool. While we have seen improvement in uncovered trips, significant improvement from last year, we understand that that's not sufficient and that we need to get to 0 uncovered trips and 95 or higher on-time performance. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. All right. You're up next. We're going to leave some time for...
Absolutely.
Please, thank you.
Yes. Next slide, please. So first, I would like to say thank you to the community panelists for sharing your very real experiences and for advocating for those who are unable to be here today, and also for sharing ideas for collaboration. My name is Varsha Ramsamir. I'm the Assistant Director of the Monitors Unit, and I would like to speak to some of the operational challenges and ongoing initiatives regarding specialized transportation for students with IEPs and 504 plans. Bus monitors, we know, play an integral role in the safe transportation of students with special needs. We are committed to improving these services for our district's most vulnerable students and committed to taking accountability for where we are falling short. The number of monitor-required students has grown 82% within 7 years, so from school year 15 to school year 22. For context of scope, the past year alone, we've observed a 31% growth of monitor-required students. In order to provide adequate service for our students, we need more monitors on board supporting them. Last year at this hearing and in years prior, we cited our challenges. We detailed the issues with recruitment and hiring, the $18,000 annualized pay, residency requirement, extensive hiring process. Since then, we have created new structures that will allow for us to increase our workforce, to train our monitors to better meet student needs, and to communicate with schools and families proactively. Currently, we have a tentative agreement with our bus monitors union that includes higher wages and benefits, incentivized training, and retention and sign-on bonuses. The city has aided in removing the residency requirement, further widening our candidate pool and making the position more competitive. Additionally, we have recently hired an HR manager who has access to the systems needed to expedite hires, and she has submitted 73 candidates for hire this fall, with 49 officially hired. Still, about 35% of our trips are uncovered on a daily basis. And we understand that until these students have the services that they need and deserve, are entitled to, our work is not done. The unit has come up with creative ways to ensure that as many of our students as possible get to and from school, but we recognize that there is a disproportionate impact on our students with special needs and their families. We look forward to using the momentum of a new contract and a dedicated HR manager to our department to increase recruitment, hiring, retention, and therefore the supports given to these students. To ensure our students are served by tenured, trained monitors, we need to retain our current monitors, as well as the new hires that come on board with us. We created 2 new board-certified behavioral analyst positions with the Office of Special Education. They will facilitate in-school trainings and respond to escalated incidents while on the road, offering additional training after such incidents. We are currently hiring for these positions.
Just 2? There's only 2?
2 board-certified behavioral analysts. Yes. We understand that our focus on hiring and training does not solve for or offer immediate assistance to the students and families that have uncovered monitor trips now. So in order to alleviate affected families now, we currently provide compensatory services and offer reimbursements to families with students with specialized transportation needs who experience service disruptions. To improve the accessibility of reimbursements and lessen the upfront financial strain on families, we are in negotiations to offer rideshare vouchers to these families. Starting this year, we have communicated coverage issues through a post-bid monitor ops report visible to schools, robocalls sent to families on a daily basis. To further support, we have created a small customer service team and opened up a queue specifically to serve special education families, which has not been done before. Through our systems improvement project, organizational restructuring, and collaboration with special education HR, we have worked to remove some of the barriers to our students receiving these services. These improvements have all been driven by the needs of our students and families and getting them the services that they are entitled to. We will continue our focus on improving those yard operations, communications to schools and families, training programs, hiring efforts until it is really felt by the communities that we serve. Thank you. I will pass it on back to Del.
Thank you. And I have the last slide.
Okay.
Next slide.
One more slide, or you have a
No,
series
that's
of?
it.
Oh, okay.
This is the last slide. The transportation team is dedicated to building long-term sustainable solutions, both internally, cross-departmentally, and in collaboration with all of our stakeholders and partners. A few of our focus areas are highlighted on this slide. Improving specialized transportation services for special education students. Key areas are students with IEPs with bus monitor requirement and through our routing team. Collaboration with district and city leaders focus on school and transportation policies that impact the delivery of transportation services for students. Finally, on September 9th, Boston Public Schools released an invitation for bid for a new bus vendor contract, which will start July 1st, 2023. Our aim with the contract is to incentivize improved outcomes for students given the current scope and scale of yellow bus transportation needs for Boston students. To close us out, I would like to thank my team. To the transportation team, I would like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate your hard work and dedication to the students and families of the city of Boston. To the students and families in the city of Boston, I want to acknowledge that we are not yet where we need to be. We still have work to do. This work will not stop until all of our students are getting to school safe and on time. Your voices are heard, and we will continue to work tirelessly until every student have access to safe, reliable, on-time transportation. Thank you.
I am so impressed about you guys. You have timed your PowerPoint presentation to the T. That means that you are like, you got it out down pat because you did it within the 20-minute allotment. So really do appreciate your time, your energy, and the data that you shared with us. Thank you so much for putting that together for us. I'm going to ask our special education. I have you as Lauren. You are the interim assistant superintendent of special education.
Yes, ma'am.
Lucky you.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the party. You now have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't have slides, but I do have just a couple of points that I'd like to share with the panel. I'd like to thank you for convening us together. I'd like to thank the families and MAC and the legal counsel for bringing these issues to us and for being here tonight and explaining how you're impacted by the transportation issues that you're having. And the transportation department has worked tirelessly in collaboration with the Office of Special Ed. First of all, I just want to say I have directed all the staff in OSE, the Office of Special Education, to be proactive about providing compensatory services for kids who are affected by late transportation or missing buses. So that's one thing. A memo was disseminated today to all school leaders, all school superintendents, and the Office of Special Education to make sure that we are being proactive about reimbursement policies and compensatory services for services missed for families and for students. Secondly, the reimbursement, I think Del mentioned it earlier, or somebody mentioned it, the reimbursement policy that we have, that BPS currently has, is inequitable, and we need to change how we offer reimbursement. So our legal advisors, in collaboration with Boston City Hall legal advisors, are working on a different way to a different procedure for those reimbursement policies. So we don't have to have families provide any kind of number. So those conversations are in the works with our legal advisors. And then finally, the only thing I would add is that we're working on, in collaboration with the Federation for Children with Special Needs. We just contracted with them to take the very dense special education policy and procedure manual and make it more family friendly, which will mean, like, right now I think it's like 175 pages or something like that. So how do we take the most salient parts and then put it in brochure kind of language for families to access? And one of those will be around reimbursement for transportation that will be translated into several languages. The policy manual in its current form is already translated into several languages, but we wanted to make sure that we had a different kind of format so you didn't have to dig through the whole, like, it's like a dissertation length document. So that's what we're working on right now. Those, that contract is working its way through procurement, but we expect that the Federation will be convening teams of families. We would love to have all of you involved to like help us think about what are the most important topics to start with. Sounds like transportation reimbursement and those kinds of things. Maybe compensatory services would be top of the list. So those are the kinds of things we're working on. Yeah.
Thank you,
My pleasure.
Lauren. Thank you, and welcome. I am going to ask one quick question, but then I'm gonna ask my second co-sponsor to start us off, given her most immediate lived experience as it relates to the conversation around special education and transportation. So I do have a quick question for Del in regards to the bid, the RFP. From what I understand, only one Transdesk, is that the only one that has applied for the RFP? Can you
That's correct. TransDev is the only vendor that responded to the IFB.
So one of the questions that I'm going to ask is why? So you can think about that. I'm just really curious. I understood that there was 4 potential, but only TransDev was the only one that came through. So I'm going to assume that it's going to make it a lot harder for you all to be competitive and hold them accountable when they're the only game in town.
That's a good question. I'll kick us off, and then I'm gonna pass it over to our Assistant Director of Contract and Compliance. So in the school bus industry currently, there's like 4 competitive contractors. TransDev is one of them. The IFB the IFB is different from the RFP. So currently we're under contract with an RFP. The IFB is different. Through the IFB process, we have to pick the lowest, most responsible and responsive bidder. How the IFB is structured currently, it's different than the current RFP is structured. One of the things that's different in the IFB and the way it's structured is the current RFP, the accountability measures in there in order to hold the vendor accountable for the services that they provide. There's not an incentive structure in there for that, which makes it difficult. It's a pass-through contract. BPS, once the contractor passed through the cost, BPS pays the cost. So there's no way to hold the current vendor accountable. The IFB process, we understand that TransDev was the only bidder. However, the way that the IFB is currently structured, it is no longer a pass-through contract. So all of the cost is like not passed through, and there are structures built into the current IFB to hold the vendor accountable for services that they're providing for students, right? So that's something that I wanted to highlight, even though things like driver, wages and stuff like that, it's still passed through. All of it, there are other vendor services that not passed through, and there's incentives to hold the vendor accountable, which I think is completely different than the current RFP. I'm gonna send
No,
it
we're good.
Okay.
You got a good, and then we only have you for 30 more minutes, and I don't want to, I wanted to start with that just because I feel like that is something that is top of mind as we talk about how we're going to address some of these issues. If we're confined to one particular vendor, I was just curious about how we're going to tackle this, knowing the constraints that you find yourselves in. But I'm going to ask my second co-sponsor to kick us off with some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the BPS parents who came to be here with us today, and to all of the members of the administration for coming. I have spent collective hours with 3 out of the 5 of you on the phone at least, in conversations about this issue. Like Councilor Mejia said, this is something that is very extremely personal for me. Every morning, one of the biggest worries that I have is whether or not my autistic nonverbal first grader is going to get picked up in the morning. And my colleagues have firsthand experience of me walking into hearings late and missing things in the morning because the school bus didn't come and I have to drive him to school, come to work late. So I have to be honest, if I wasn't an elected official, I would have lost my job at this point. So I have a few questions, and I will not try to monopolize the time, but I know that there's a lot of work that you've been doing because we've been in conversations behind the scenes, and so a lot of my questions are mostly going to be for questions that I know the answers to, and I'm asking for the record so that everybody else can hear them. So the first thing that I want to talk about, because I have a child with special needs, I have questions around special education specifically. Can you specify from all of the students that you transport, how many students with disabilities use the BPS transportation system?
That's a good question. We have over 6,000 students that receive door-to-door door-to-door transportation.
Okay. Over 6,000?
Yes.
Thank you, that's helpful. So, and this is for Assistant Superintendent Viviani. You talked a little bit about compensatory services and wanting to make sure that your staff is proactive. How do you ensure that students get services on their IEP when they've missed these services because of the bus issues? Do you have reporting from inside of BPS to the special education office? Ultimately, how do you monitor it? How do you follow up with families around compensatory services? What does being proactive ultimately look like?
Yeah, good question, thank you. So there's a code that, that schools, let me back up. Recently, there was another communication sent about the transportation delays and the way that we code kids who are late or miss school because of transportation. There's a special code in there, and so we're tracking that data. We're beginning to track that data. As far as I know, we haven't tracked it in the past, but this is a new way to track. And then look at the data of those codes, and then provide compensatory services as we look at all of the kids who may be late or miss school because of transportation based on the code. So there is communication with school leaders, operational leaders, the COAS, which are coordinators of special education at each school, to provide some guidance around how to code kids and what that looks like. This is new. This is pretty new. I'm pretty new to BPS, so I'm not sure how they did it in the past, but this is a new kind of system that we're moving forward with.
So parents have not started receiving phone calls about compensatory services. You've only just started tracking them.
For kids who have been missing a lot of buses, because we get also the notification that goes out to all school leaders about which buses are missing or which monitors are missing. We are following up with individual COSAs and school leaders who have this ongoing problem, for sure.
Thank you. And, you know, I just want to start off by saying that those questions in particular and these processes obviously need to be in place, but they need to be in place because it's the afterthought of the fact that we're missing the buses. And so as we get students there, then we need that process lessened. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse. And so my next questions are going to be around budget and workforce. So the FY22 and recommended budget for BPS transportation is about 10% of all of BPS spending right now, and it increased by $4 million between 2022 and 2023. And special education students, out-of-district special education students and the transportation costs are about 24% of BPS transportation budget. Can you tell me a little bit about what investments you've been making to improve BPS transportation system with the investments from the previous budget that we approved?
Sure. So for the investments for last year was surrounding our school bus monitor unit, right-sizing the school bus monitor unit. One of the things in our school bus monitor, the space of our bus monitors unit, is that the unit remained the same in terms of staffing and structure since I started at BPS 10 years ago, even though the number of students requiring monitors increased by 137%, and we've seen one-to-one bus monitor assignments increase over 300%. Across the transportation operations, structures and systems remain the same.
Okay, so I'm sorry, just because I want to highlight that.
Yeah.
You have seen 300% growth in the need for one-on-one monitors, and you have seen 137% growth in the need for monitors altogether in BPS.
Yes, correct.
So this exponential need for monitors, how many monitors do you need to make sure that there's a monitor on every bus that needs it, and how many do you have right now?
Okay. Currently on staff, we have 511 bus monitors. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head of the number of monitors we need across the system to be fully staffed. I know a good example is that we need 481 one-to-one monitors. So if we were to assign each of our students currently in the system a one-to-one monitors,
you would have like 30 monitors left for everybody else.
Correct, for the rest of students. Okay. And the rest of students is 1,664 students that require general monitors.
Okay, so you're talking about tripling your workforce. Okay. Thank you, that's incredibly helpful. So one of the conversations during the budget process were the staff shortages, both for the monitors and the bus drivers. It was kind of central to the conversation. And I know that you've talked a little bit about the union contract, and I'm not sure if that's ratified yet, and so I don't know how much you can talk about it. So you can't tell me the parameters of the new union contract.
So the bus monitors contract, we just got the tentative agreement with the union. I can't go into details because the contract is not ratified at the moment. We're hoping for a ratification vote on November 19th. But in that contract, there are reforms, there's increased wages, and also vacation times for our bus monitors who, on average, currently are getting paid $18,000 a year. Which is not a livable wage in the city of Boston.
It's not a livable wage anywhere.
Yeah, correctly.
Okay, so $18,000, okay, I'm sorry. So, thank you. Can I, through the chair, put in a request to the transportation department that once that contract is ratified, we get detailed information about what changes were made in that contract?
Correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
For sure.
I'm sorry, Chair, do you mind if I ask one more?
Yeah, normally you get 7 minutes, but because we only have them until 7 and there's only 2 other colleagues here, you can have them work.
Okay, and can you give me an update on the recruiting? How many open positions? I mean, we talked a little bit about the monitors, but for the bus drivers, and how many have you been able to fill, and the status of the bus driver contract as well?
Yep. So the bus driver contract was ratified and implemented back in the summer. And so currently on staff, we have over 885 drivers on staff, but 200 and about 10 or 11 drivers are currently on leave. Right now, we have 600 buses like in the operations, and we, on any given day, we have about 673 drivers that are available and on staff to drive our 600 buses. And this is minus like daily attendance for drivers that are not on leave. TransDev has hired 106 driver trainees since May, including 41 drivers with CDLs, 65 trainees needing CDLs. TransDev currently has 24 total drivers in training. The most recent hired trainees include a class of 3 who were CDL hires on October 31st, and a class of 11 CDL trained, and 4 more CDL hires that all began training on October 17. So to circumvent the driver coverage issues that we saw last year, our transportation team, in collaboration with TransDev, started doing recruiting just like drivers with regular driver's license and driver trainees, and training them to get their CDL licenses. This is something that the district has never done before, and we're trying to implement a program like internally. Right now we're working with a vendor, DPV, but we're we've hired 3 additional trainers and are going to continue to hire trainers to pull this in internally, and is working with the mayor's office, because we also want to recruit within the community, right? Within the city of Boston, recruit folks in the community to become bus drivers. So we're going to train them to get their licenses.
Thank you, thank you. I'll go back for a second round just in case before. I know my colleagues are anxious, so I'm setting the alarm up for 5 minutes, and then what I've been doing is giving you a 2-minute grace, so you have 7 minutes total, but just if you are done in 5, great.
Awesome.
You now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for being here, and thank you for the panelists for speaking. As a former BPS mom and teacher, I was a special ed teacher and a special ed coordinator, and everyone in this room definitely read the DESI report, but I know hearing your firsthand stories, you didn't need to read the DESI report to know that BPS for decades has been criticized for their transportation. It's dysfunctional. And I really love that you uplifted those individual stories. Thank you for sharing your personal story, and both of you and just being here to uplift those who need to have a voice. It was one of the things as a special ed teacher when I would go into the IEP meetings. You have to advocate for those students and making sure that we all understand that transporting our students to school isn't something extra, it's a legal part of their IEP. And transporting all of our students, if 22,000 children in Boston are being transported, not all to BPS schools, we know that, but it is our legal requirement to bus any Boston resident to, if it's a charter school, if it's a Catholic school. And I know I have spoken directly to the superintendent about the numerous bell times, so I know there's a lot and it's juggling a lot of different schedules, but it is also our legal obligation to bus our non-BPS kids to schools, right? So we have to figure it out. And with our over $1 billion school budget, 10% of that, 116 million, is spent on transportation. So we're spending a lot of money. We definitely have to do better. And when we look at that percentages, right, 88%, hey, that's a B+, that sounds good, but it's not, because that means 2,640 students are being picked up late or not picked up at all every single day. That's a lot, so I'll just say that again. 2,640 students, school day is disrupted on average every day in BPS. And I know as a teacher, the morning day is so important, and thank you, Mom, for sharing about the breakfast. I was a kindergarten teacher, K1, so if a child came in late, yeah, the cafeteria was closed up, that contract's closed, and how do we accommodate for that? And that one thing can disrupt the whole day, which then, as a special ed teacher, you understand that then snowballs the whole day. This is about buses, but like I said, the reason why we spend over, $116 million a year is because we need to get kids into our school buildings so they are learning. And that is our requirement as a society. We have to do better at that. But when we talk about the compensatory services, and we know that many students on IEPs have hundreds of hours owed to them during COVID, because you can't deliver physical therapy over, remotely. So that was a problem that we were dealing with. And buses being late or not picking up is only one factor that causes students to miss their special ed services. It's also, which we talk about a lot, the staffing shortages, or during COVID or at any moment, teachers calling in late. So we know that many principals are juggling to hire ABA special ed teachers. So one thing I know I asked, because a lot of these numbers were brought to us during the budget season, so thank you, and I know then I did ask then also, when are these services being delivered? Because a student should not have to, if their speech therapist owes them 5 sessions, I often would see that a student was then penalized because they would miss lunch, or they would go with the speech therapist during recess to make up a time, or they would miss their art or music class because they would say, well, legally we have to get you the services. So I do think, especially with that, we know now more than ever, because of this COVID and bus transportation crisis we're in, that we really have to monitor that. And I asked before, so through the chair, I would like to find out where we are with that, how many students, and how are those services being delivered? Because I know in other districts, they needed to hire, like through Easter sales and others, like extra special ed teachers, or were students having to stay after on weekends? So how does BPS plan on delivering those services back to the students? And do parents have a say in when they can bring their child to get those services delivered to them? So that's important to me, and we are on a path. I know that you're hopeful with the new contract and with the ability to hopefully hire more and retain more bus drivers and monitors, that will do better. But I do know that, we have to make sure that our students and thank you for saying, like, you're able to be here and you're able to advocate, but we have to make sure that those students who are just missing. When we spoke with the superintendent last time, she came in here at our last hearing, we have a 40% absentee, chronic absentee students just not showing up to school. It's at 40% in BPS right now. So we really need to tackle that, and I will end there. I know I heard my time, but I know we could continue to talk about this for days, but I do want you to know that, I'm here to support. I know I call you when parents individually are in a bind or in a crisis, but it is also the system we have to make sure that's set up so every parent knows that they can get someone on the other end of the phone that can help them get their child to school safely. So thank you, and thank you, Chair, for letting me go a little over.
Councillor President Flynn, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panelists for being here, and more importantly, thank you to the concerned parents and activists for your incredible work. It was moving listening to the concerned parents talk about their struggles, trying to do their best for their children, providing them with the best possible program and services that are required under state and federal law that has been said here several times, including free breakfast and lunch, reliable, safe, consistent public transportation, making sure residents in public housing, our immigrant families, communities of color and language access are also factored in. It seems like we don't have a structured, coordinated transportation plan that's working, that doesn't address the challenges of parents and students. So it's important that we continue working together and talking about this issue. We live in the wealthiest city in the country practically. We have the resources. There's really no reason why we can't get this, we can't address this issue. Solve this major problem. Let me ask a couple quick questions. I thought I heard that today 35% of students that need monitors don't get them. Is that right?
35% of our monitor required trips are currently uncovered.
They are not covered.
Uncovered. That's correct.
One thing I might quickly add on that, Counselor, is that's the pool of trips that don't have a monitor on a daily basis. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that 35% of monitor required students aren't getting to school. There's a number of different creative solutions that the team works. Many drivers are willing to take students without monitors if they're able to and feel they can support them. We also provide backup buses as early as possible, or work in other ways to help get as many of those students to school as possible.
And another thing to add is another creative solution that the team has been working through with our radio bus drivers is just pulling monitor required students off of their assigned buses onto radio buses by school, and just like putting monitors on those buses to cover a larger range of students. Also, that 35% does not account for standby monitors that are also assigned to students on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. I don't want to downplay. I don't want to downplay that stat. That's a significant stat that really needs to be discussed, because parents are entitled to that type of service for their child. So if we downplay it, then we're never going to solve the problem, unfortunately. Do we track how many minutes a student is not in class, especially students with disabilities that are not in class because of transportation challenges? And do the parents know about that?
That's not a stat that's currently tracked. We have in our student SIS system right now, if buses are reporting to school late, school staff there's a code in that system where school staff can record a student showing up to school late because of transportation. And when that's recorded, the special education team can work with school staff and families to provide compensatory services for students due to late buses.
Does that happen, though? Do parents regularly receive an update weekly from BPS or from the school that their child missed 170 minutes of school that week due to transportation challenges?
When there's an interruption of services, we do reach out to the families and state that there is an interruption of services. Regarding transportation, this is being tracked in a new way recently. So the number of minutes a kid is late because of transportation, we're not tracking the number of minutes. What we do is say, this child missed these services because of transportation, and now we need to make the child whole, which is what the law says, and provide compensatory services in that way.
I think the parents would want to know how many minutes their child are absent from school due to transportation challenges, and I think the parent would want their child to make up exactly that number of minutes. Are we going to do that?
I know that the special education team, so a memo was sent out to schools today.
Yep, today.
To schools in order for school staff like the COSAT schools to advocate to make sure that they are tracking and turning around compensatory services on time for students. I think, however, we can continue to think about ways on how to improve the current structure in the district to make sure that we are proactively communicating to families when there's a disruption in service and making sure that we're accounting for all minutes that's missed in classrooms for students, especially our students with disabilities.
Thank you, and I appreciate the answers that you provided. I'm not being critical of BPS. I think what's important is the council is one to work together to try to resolve as much as we can this major problem. So I want to thank the panelists for being here, for my colleagues in their work, but especially the parents that are really courageous and unsung heroes, in my opinion, in this city. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor, I just wanted to correct one thing on record, especially just like not downplaying the issues just like across the transportation operation. I misspoke when I said the 35% does not incorporate like our standby monitors. That percentage number does incorporate our standby monitors. So I just wanted to say that for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I know that Jakira, you wanted to answer that quickly. I am going to allow you to do that, and then I'll ask my questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond on the comments made about compensatory services, and just to quickly provide a little bit of context. Within my role at MAC, I only take helpline calls specifically from BPS family members. And I just wanted to acknowledge and kind of elevate what I've been hearing. Within my role, I've been in my role for a little bit over a year. I have never once, I just want to emphasize, never once spoken to a family who has a child receiving special education services that were introduced to compensatory services. The ongoing challenges, even within this school year specifically, again, I have never spoken to a family that was educated and was informed of what they may legally be entitled to through compensatory education. So I just wanted to elevate that because I feel, and it's my perspective, one of my biggest frustrations with the district is the gaslighting of the experience. I'm very thankful, Lauren Viviani, for your ongoing efforts to ensure that students are closer to receiving compensatory services, but that's a significant area of improvement. So I just wanted to acknowledge and elevate that that is not consistent with what I've been hearing from families.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to, in the interest of time, since you all have to leave, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to just uplift a few voices. And the reason why we filed this hearing back during last school year. It's from a parent, and I believe she might or may be signed up, I don't know, but her name is Fabian. She says, can you call me when you have a second? I'm still having issues with transportation. I am so tired of BPS. It's getting out of hand, and the fact that they're lying and making excuses are getting into my skin. I asked her to send me the address, all the details. She sends me the picture. FYI, I called my sister. She texted me, because this is what happens when you are all about delivering constituent services, at 7:39 in the morning, so that I can help her address this situation. I reached out to BPS, tried to make some things happen. 8 o'clock, nothing, no response, nothing. And here I am, a city councilor. She goes, I called my sister to pick her up and to drop her to school. She's on her way there. She will be there around 10:20, shaking my head. This is a student who's supposed to be at school at 8, who is also on an IEP. BPS called but didn't give me a time frame or when they will pick her up. Thanks for the update. Next day, no bus again this morning. Then I said, I'm filing a hearing order. Good morning. Hope you had a great weekend. Just to keep you in the loop, this is Monday morning. The bus didn't pick her up again this morning. My stress level is hurting to the core. Tuesday, June 7th. Good morning, love. Hope you are well. Just to keep you in the loop, the bus driver did not make the stop to us again this morning. Possible alternative bus coming after 9:30 in the morning. Wednesday, June 8th, good morning, still no bus. And they are claiming the bus was here at 7:02. She was outside at 7 in the morning. The lady hung up the phone on me and refused to send a backup bus for her. I am so aggravated with transportation. I have an IEP meeting this morning. People who are answering the phones are rude and dismissive and are disrespectful. She refused to send me the picture of the bus, and I apologize that you have to deal with all this stuff. I'm not gonna go on because this went on. And this is consistent. And I want you all to know that for me, having this particular hearing in government accountability, transparency, and accessibility is very different than having it in the education committee. Because this is really about accessibility. Are we really providing families with the resources that we're supposed to? Are they able to access those resources? Accountability, are we holding ourselves accountable to the things that we're hearing in this chamber? And transparency is more data. While, I appreciate the PowerPoint presentation, and Del, you know this, if anyone has seen my award-winning public hearings in the past, I have an adverse reaction to PowerPoints. The information is important, but I believe it gets in the way of meaningful dialogue, right? And I think that sometimes we get so lost in these numbers that the human experience really can't be quantified or qualified in a data PowerPoint presentation. So when I think about the parents and the social and emotional and financial drain that this causes families every day, you can't measure that, but that is real, right? So as we continue to work through this, I really want us to take a moment to pause and see the stories and the parents that are dealing with this issue every day and the impact that it's making on them financially. Because I appreciate the rideshare idea, but I'm curious, does this rideshare, because I know I have a 12-year-old daughter, I don't know how comfortable I would feel sending my daughter to school in a rideshare. Are you gonna pay for me to go with her to school and then take me to where I need to go so that I can get to work? What's that rideshare look like? Because if it's just dropping that child off at school unaccompanied, I don't know if that's, can you talk to me about that?
I can take that question. So we had a lot of back and forths over the past, middle of last school year up until a few days ago with Lyft. And I've gotten the opportunity to look at their systems and what they can provide to parents and families. One of the things that we are negotiating is that if this contract goes through and gets approved, our customer service team in the bus monitors unit that specifically only services our students with special needs will have the opportunity to manage the rideshare system to get parents and families to school. A parent will have to ride with their student to school, and the trips can be two-way, right? So the customer service rep in the unit will also get to call a ride for the family member to get them to where they need to go.
So I just want to note for just something for us to consider is the financial burden that we're still placing on the parent, because if you have to take your child to school within this ride share situation, then they're late. They're gonna miss. If you're an hourly worker and it takes you 2 hours just to get your child to school and then to work, that's 2 hours worth of pay that you're gonna get.
Correct.
Can you just talk to me about how you're reconciling the financial impact that this will have on hourly wage workers?
So the goal is for us to not to have to use the rideshare system. The goal is for us to hire and retain bus monitors and drivers to make sure that our students are getting to school safe and on time. The rideshare system, as we know, we have to implement something when we're short drivers and or monitors to ensure that our students get to and from school. And we need to alleviate the financial upfront burden that our parents and families, and also our immigrant families who are undocumented, we need to eliminate the burdens for these families. Mm-hmm. And in order to eliminate those burdens is to make sure that they do not have to pay upfront for transportation access for their students. Unfortunately, currently, we do not have a structure in place for hourly wage workers who may miss an hour or two of work. And
that's just to drop off.
Yes.
An hour or two just to drop off, and we don't know what happens in the evening, right? So we're talking about 4 hours potentially just to accommodate the gap. But I am also on a timer, and I want to make sure that I get my time in, so I get the direction that you're moving in, and I appreciate it. I guess the last thing that I'm curious about, Lauren, to my colleague's question in regards to how we're tracking the learning loss, specifically for students who are on IEPs. When we think about accountability, can you talk to us a little bit about the impact that it has on their performance and their ability to thrive? What are the educational outcomes when you have missed 12 hours? Like I believe there was 12 hours, 12 days of school missing. If you're a student on an IEP and you've missed 12 days of school because you haven't been able to get there because of the bus, can you just describe to us the impact that makes on that particular child?
Absolutely, it's incredibly negative impact, no question about it. And depending on the nature of the disability or the needs of the child and what their IEP says, even a kid without an IEP missing 12 days of school is going to have a huge negative impact. But for any kid with an IEP or a kid who is neurodivergent or has any kind of emotional or intellectual impairment, it's going to be that much more critical that it's absolutely horrific that they miss so much school.
Thank you for that, Lauren. We actually have a hearing on special education, so you'll be having another opportunity. Now you know I don't like PowerPoint presentations, and you know not to bring one, so I'm looking forward to that. Okay, Ms. Becky, you want to say something, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to ask my colleagues. I'm going to have one more round of questions for the administration, then we're going to kick it over to the community panel. Is that okay?
Okay, I think I turned that on. I wanted to apologize. I think I have to leave early. When I got the information for the hearing, I thought we were the first half and then they were going second half, so I had planned for someone to pick me up right around now.
No, it's okay.
I'm really sorry to everyone. I'm happy to connect with anybody that has further questions for me at any time. I'm very sorry.
Oh, no,
for that
don't be
planning.
sorry. We made some accommodations because we learned late that the administration had to leave earlier than anticipated, so
Yep.
we're all trying to compromise everybody here. Okay, Councilor Lara, you have the floor, and for follow-up questions only, it'd be 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to mention, I just want to touch, before I ask my question, I want to touch on a couple of things. One of the things is the covering buses in the morning. I think that you talked about how 35% of them, the monitors, were not filled. And obviously I have the text message thread that Councilor Mejia read could have been a verbatim text message thread between me and Annie. That is exactly what my text message thread looks like. The bus didn't show up, the bus didn't get here, it's not here, it's late, no messages, screenshots of the, that is exactly what it has felt like for me. So I'm just, empathizing with that parent. But one of the things that has changed in the recent weeks is that even though his original bus in the morning has not been covered, there has been a covering bus in the morning every day. And so I've gotten a call about a covering bus, time for the pickup every single day. And so I just wanted to lift that up because you brought up some of the creative solutions and the covering buses in the morning. When the original bus doesn't have a driver, they've started a process where they'll send a covering bus, a different bus, either at a different time or at an earlier time to pick up the kids in the morning. And there's some kinks to work out there, but I just wanted to lift that up. And to Jakira's point, that was my question about the compensatory services. When I said you've started collecting the information, but you haven't actually started offering them back, is because I know that I'm sure that my son has missed, and I've never received a phone call about compensatory services in relation to transportation. He's received compensatory services because of COVID and all those other things, and so he has, but in relation to BPS transportation, nobody has ever called to say, hey, Zaire missed his speech therapy, or he missed his occupational therapy that day that he was 2 hours late, and so I just wanted to lift that up, that's why I asked that question. And so my question that I have, can you walk me through, because we're here to talk about a problem, a very specific problem, can you talk me through what happens when there is a late bus, a lack of a driver, a lack of a monitor? How do you remedy it, and how do you communicate with parents, right? And so the process breaks down in different places. So can you paint for me a picture of what happens and what goes wrong and why we are having this experience?
Thank you for that question. I can kick it off, and any of my colleagues here can fill in anything that I missed. So when there's notification of a late bus, a bus that has no assigned driver on any given day, and or no assigned monitor, what happens is our team, there's a Google sheet that's emailed out for school leaders to make sure that school leaders are aware. Also, there are robocalls that goes out to parents and families, letting them know that there's not a driver available and or a bus monitor available on any given day for their assigned bus.
Can I stop you there? I'm sorry. So, for example, you send it to the schools, so the principals at the schools know that there's a students or multiple students in their school that doesn't have a bus. The robocalls, there's a lot of reports of people not getting any of the robocalls, so where does that break down?
Yep, that's a good question. The information that we pull for robocall is through the student assignment system, through Aspen. One of the kinks to work out there is a parent registers for school, and the phone number that they have in that system at the time, right? Parents' phone numbers may change, and parents' phone numbers change year over year, or like whenever it changes. Most parents notify their schools, and every school year, for example, my son would get a parent contact card where I fill in his new contact information. I'm not necessarily going to the welcome center to change my phone number.
So the
make
contact
sure-
information is being updated with the school, but not with BPS and not with BPS Transportation?
Correct. Working through some of those systems in closer collaboration with the school to make sure that the information in Aspen is probably updated. We're getting the most updated information. I think we can probably do a better job at communicating with schools on just like making sure that at the beginning of the school year when contact information is gathered for our students, that it's also updated in the student information system.
You can keep going.
Yep. And
Yeah, we're gonna, because you have at 7 o'clock and Councilor Murphy still needs to ask some questions.
yep. So robocalls go out to parents and families when buses are available. As buses become available through the system, backup buses are sent to parents and families. Unfortunately, those buses are going out late, especially right now where we do not have like 14% of standby drivers that are sitting around at the yards every day. Those buses are going out late. Councilor Lara, you shared the creative solution surrounding bus monitors. However, that's not covering the 35% population. So there are backup buses that are also going out late to pick up those students to get them to school.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Lara. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to uplift a few things. Many of the families in BPS have students at more than one school. So many of the calls, frantic calls I get also are from parents who get the text that maybe the bus for the 7:20 pickup is not going to be on time, so they rush to drive them to school if they're able to, which then means they miss the second bus that's coming if their child's at another school. So there is this snowball effect also that one bus miss then affects the entire family in that morning routine, which throws it all off. I know parent here mentioned how with her the grandmother, she can be home, but then she can't drive, so it can just cause chaos in the morning. A few things too I wanted to uplift. We do always, because the federal government will come in and shut us down. We often highlight the need to make sure that our students who are on IEPs, that our special ed students are getting the required time in services, which is absolutely true. But our general ed students are also, allowed and required to have 180 days of school. So through the chair, again, I know we've been asking for this information, but how many school days have all of our students, not just our students in special ed? I know we track that differently because the federal government, DESE, needs that information more. So how many students have been late or missing time during the day? Because after a certain time, it's not counted as a day. That's why we can only have those 2 early dismissals a year. So we know that you have to put in a certain amount of hours in a day for it to be counted as a full day. I also, do we have any information, because I know from working in the schools and just knowing it's gotten worse now, but teachers, paras, principals hop on buses to be the bus monitor. And then a teacher will pick them up at the kid's house, and that happens a lot. I know you're shaking your head, you've heard this before. So do we have data, like real data? And I know a lot of times paras and teachers don't want to admit it, or they're like, oh, it's okay, or a para feels pressured that they have to because they want to help that kid get home, but they also probably have to get home themselves, maybe on public transportation, to get their own child off the bus. I have seen, unfortunately, that it's usually the people who feel most vulnerable in their position are the ones who say yes. So that data would be great. And if we're not tracking it, we do, like, I know Councilor Mejia said it, and Councilor Flynn, we have to have these honest conversations and talking to the principals and the teachers, like how many, because I was getting calls of, paras, even in summer school, paras were hopping on the buses during the summer school to make sure kids were getting home.
I do want to highlight, Counselor, that, and I think it's important to highlight it in this space. One, to say thank you, and two, to just highlight. We have over 90 paraprofessionals who have signed up to be bus monitors to support students across their schools. And without the support of our paraprofessionals, our lunch monitors, our
Crossing guards,
teachers, and our principals, we would not even be able to cover as much ground as we're covering.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I think it does go back to the $116 million we spend. Like, we just have to do better, and everyone does. These are our children, and everyone in this space knows you'll do anything you can at any moment. You know, you will do that. And lastly, when a bus is late and the secretary calls down to the classroom to say, hey, you know, bus 238 just showed up, don't mark them late. It was the bus that was late, they're not tardy. We know that happens, but are we making sure that when the bus does finally show up and those students enter the classroom, that it's not just that they came late, that we know exactly what time they arrived, or are we just sending them to the classroom? Because there is a code you can put in Aspen, because I know I would get the call saying, don't mark them tardy, because it wasn't their fault. And it's not a fault thing at this point. We want to make sure, you know, that Counselor Lara knows like exactly what time did her son show up at school, because she knows on Tuesdays at 8:15 that's speech therapy, or parents need to know like what time did they arrive, and are we at the school level tracking that?
I don't think currently that's a system that's built into Aspen that can be tracked. I know that there's a code that schools can use if a student is late because of transportation.
Because then it's just not counted. It looks as though you're not late. Right? So if my kid's never getting picked up, and I know that of the 180 school days, at least 100 times they were not picked up on time, I would hope that that report card reflected that my child was tardy 100 times, because I know it wasn't me as a parent who couldn't get them out the door, but is the school keeping that information so that the parents can have that? In organizations that are like supporting parents can say like, wait, we are tracking it. We know that your child.
So I'm going to take over back to my hearing here. I know. I just want to I've been very generous with timing because the administration had a hard stop at 7. So I've allowed a second round, but I know 7 o'clock was the hard stop. So I just want to make sure that you all are okay with staying a little bit longer before we go to the community panel questions, which is the way we set it up, is to ask you all for your questions first before we move on to the next. But because I know you all have to leave, I need something on the record from you all before we let you go. Is that okay? And I'm not sure who's going to deliver it. But we have a really clear understanding of where the pitfalls are, right, where the gaps are. And I think that it would be really helpful to hear from you all today as what you reflect and what you've heard from folks here in this chamber. What's the game plan? We know what we know. The question always is, what are we going to do about it? So I'm just really curious about any specific, maybe 1 or 2 things that the special education department is thinking of doing, Del, you and your team. I just need to hear on the record 1 or 2 things that we can offer families as the school year continues, that you have reflected on since the school started. What lessons have you learned? What are your immediate resets? And Lauren, I'm really concerned about the fact that when it comes to students and not getting their IEP services, what is that return on investment, and where do those dollars go if those services were not rendered? Where does the money go? We need to figure out how each dollar is being used when it's not being used in the way it was supposed to be. So I don't know who wants to go first. Lauren.
I have 2 minutes, sure.
It's not your answer, I only have 2 minutes, so.
Oh,
A minute you and a minute you, and then we have to close out your panel because we have to move on to the community.
Understood, understood. So my commitment is to make sure that we are doing a better job, the Office of Special Education. I hear you loud and clear that families are not hearing about compensatory services. And I will commit to making sure that we are doing much more outreach around that aspect, tracking the data as it comes in, tracking the missed buses, and making sure that we're going out to the school leaders, to the COAST, the coordinators at the school, to make sure that we're offering compensatory services based on the individual needs of the children.
We like Lauren. Quick and to the point. Go ahead, Del, your turn.
Thank you, Counselor. In terms of commitment, what the transportation team is committed to doing for our families. One, I would like to say, Jakira, thank you most recently for our collaboration and our conversations. One of the things is listening to our parents and families and making sure there's a safe space for parents and families to report their transportation concerns. In collaboration with MAC, our team is pulling together a transportation advisory council for our parents and families. That's one of the things our team is committed to doing. Another thing is we are committed to improving access to transportation for all of our students, and areas that we're looking into is our bus monitor unit. We're continuing to do whatever we can to hire bus drivers, hire and retain our bus drivers in the system, hire and retain our bus monitors, and also through our contract process, through the new IFB that we will be implementing soon, making sure that we're holding our contractor accountable for providing reliable transportation to our students.
Thank you, Del. And one last recommendation that I heard earlier on from a parent was more intense outreach in schools to get the word out. And I would also say that, BPS has, we are a resource-rich city but we're coordination poor. And there are a lot of folks out here who are doing amazing work around family and community engagement, but we usually tend to focus on the family liaisons, but they already have their plate full. So I would recommend and encourage you all to consider creating a parent street team where whatever information needs to be put out into the streets, that you have a group of parents that are gonna go across the entire city and share information about whatever resources and information that they need. Because parents are powerful and they could really be a great partner with you all. And I think that's one of the things that I heard Leon talk about. And I just kind of want to put that out there because you're looking for people to work in the BPS Transportation Department. What better way than to just go directly to some of the schools where parents are coming in and out. Some of them are maybe looking for jobs, and this could be a perfect match. So just want to encourage you all that sending things via email and Twitter and Facebook, it's not reaching the masses. So I think having a street team of folks to help you do that was one of the suggestions that I heard Leon say, and I want to end with that for you all to consider.
Thank you for that, Councilor Mejia. We had some folks on our staff do some of that work this summer. One of the things that we saw that we were getting applicants, but because of the wages that we currently pay bus monitors, we could not, like after the interview process and applicants understood the wage structure for bus monitors, they were no longer interested in the position. So we put a pause on that for a second, but the goal here, and with Varsha and the team and our new HR manager, once the contract is ratified, is to hit the ground running, hit the streets, collaborate with our parents and families and our different advocacy groups and our schools to hire and retain employees.
Thank you, thank you. And I want to be and I just want to thank you all for staying longer than your 7 o'clock hard stop. So it speaks volumes to your commitment to this conversation. So, and actually we held you hostage longer than what we were supposed to. So I really do appreciate your grace and your partnership in this conversation. I'm going to now kick it over to my colleagues if you have questions for the community panelists. Councilor Lara? Yes, you do, of course.
I come prepared with too many questions to ask. One of the things my question specifically is about your experience with the communication integration between the bus yard, the bus monitors, the customer service, BPS transportation that you call in the morning, the 635 number, and the schools.
Yeah.
Or, the bus driver, bus monitor, like, where do you see the most breakdown in information when you're trying, from beginning to end, from where the buses get to? How has that integration been for you?
The schools always know what's going on, I could say that, at least
Okay.
this year. I spoke to Dell about this privately, and I was like, if the bus is late, I have a covering bus, the bus app doesn't tell me what the new covering bus is. I don't get a text. So if a bus shows up and it's like 201 and she's not 201, I wouldn't put my child on the bus, right? So I think there is like a gray area with communication there. I work in technology, so I'm very sensitive to when technology doesn't meet the mark that an end user, me, would need. So I try not to be like super nitpicky because I think it's just a professional thing that I just go through. But I just think between the robocalls, and again, you guys talked about Aspen not detailing when a student actually makes it there. So what's the difference if a bus is running late between 10 minutes and an hour? That's significant, right? Late is 10 minutes, like excessively late is an hour. And so I think communication-wise, it would be nice to have like a second robocall, right? To say, because you're calling at 6:30 now, which is great, because last year the calls were terrible. So now at 6:30, you can kind of figure out, all right, I'm gonna have to bring my child to school or not. Like if the robocall actually comes, that's another issue. But like if you do get it at 6:30 and school doesn't start till 8:15, I think there should be an update, right? Maybe service is regular, or maybe you thought it was 10 minutes, but now it's looking like the bus is like 30 minutes behind. Something like that would be helpful, from my opinion.
From what you've heard from families, do you have any take on the breakdown in communication between all the involved parties?
Definitely. I think to begin, I just want to thank the Transportation Department and the Office of Special Ed being present. I want to acknowledge that the Office of Multilingual and Multicultural Education is not in the room from my understanding. I don't believe any of you are from the OMME. But I just want to acknowledge that we are missing that voice and that perspective. And when it comes to our ESL families, the district is not meeting the mark and communicating effectively with those families. A lot of communication that families are receiving are not always multilingual. A lot of the documentation that's on BPS's website is not translated. For example, the BPS travel expense reimbursement form is not multilingual on the website, and that's a huge problem, and that has to change. Just to speak on the GPS tracking system, it's great that we have that system in place, but the GPS system only shares, and not even consistently, where the student is. It does not paint a picture of what's happening. So for example, I received a phone call from a family who has a student that's nonverbal. The bus was rerouted back to the school. That family had no idea if that child was left behind on the bus, and if the school had no idea that that student was on the bus. For me, I have a brother with Down syndrome, he's nonverbal. I could not imagine receiving that phone call. I wouldn't be able to navigate that experience on a consistent basis. So it's really important that when we think about the multiple identities and intersections that families have, we're strategically thinking about language access, effective communication, authentic community engagement, not just picking up the phone when things like that happen, but ensuring that families can reach BPS staff at any point in their primary language, because that's not happening. And we have to think about our most vulnerable learners, students with disabilities. The GPS system is great, but it doesn't allow families to understand what's happening. Thank you.
Yeah, luckily, our situation, as I mentioned, it hasn't been as much about lateness, although we have had some trouble with the GPS system where it just says it's down. It's only been a handful of times, but it is stressful. And again, luckily, we're a family with flexibility who can sit on our stoop for up to 40 minutes and just hope we're going to catch the bus. I did want to mention around tickets because I actually didn't even submit a ticket when we realized there wasn't a monitor because we had a failed ticket before school even started. My husband and I were super confused about how to schedule this door-to-door transportation. Was it all 5 days? Was it not? So my husband submitted a ticket in early September. Someone responded, asked for follow-up information, he sent that, and then there was no answer to our question and it was just closed. And so still as of November, we didn't get an answer on that. I did want to mention also, I wish the special ed director was here for this, but I did want to mention that in our IEP, it says that our son needs door-to-door transportation and a safety restraint harness. It does not say he needs a monitor. We were verbally told there would be a monitor, but someone recently pointed out that in the fine print, officially he doesn't need a monitor. So I would love there to be some probing into is there even an accurate number of monitors that you know are needed? Because in our case, someone said, well, he doesn't need it. But I said, if he needs the safety restraint system, and a 5-year-old who is very regularly dysregulated, that's not a kid who can sit down calmly on a bus and buckle himself in, and that we can trust that that will work.
This is important. I know we're running short on time, and I should have said this before, but your experience, I feel like BPS is trying to talk parents out of monitors this year. I experienced that last spring with my IEP. My daughter had a one-to-one monitor last year because the monitor was frequently getting off the bus before her stop, so they updated it to one-to-one. So when I asked for that for this year's IEP, they were like, oh, that's not a thing. And I'm like, well, how is it not a thing? We had a whole meeting about it. They're like, no, it's just a general monitor, right? And so hearing your experience makes me wonder, I don't know if it's a special ed office. I don't think it's a transportation. I definitely think it's a special ed thing where you don't really know, you don't know what you don't know, right? And as a new parent, I don't know, okay, maybe there isn't a general monitor, but I know that specifically last year they updated her IEP for one-to-one monitor, and then this year they acted like it wasn't a thing. So it felt for me like they were trying to talk me out of a monitor.
Dale, you want to answer? You want to address that, please?
I can address I was gonna mention too about the one-to-one monitor, because I think I spoke to somebody from the team about that because my son's that year had a one-to-one and went to general.
Yeah. I can speak to your experience and Shamir to your experience. So in terms of providing monitors on buses, monitors are only provided on buses for students who where there's a monitor written into the IEP. So monitors, even though they are special education students, door-to-door special education students on other buses, if it's not written into the student IEP, a monitor is not provided. That's something that as a team we're looking into and working on, hopefully in the very near future. By the end of this month, we figure out how we're going to do this work differently. We've done a lot of work trying to figure out how to fix that issue. I think, Shamir, I definitely do not have the special ed background to dig deep into your experience about the one-to-one monitor assignment, but one of the things I would say is that I think parents, both of you guys' concerns are real. And I think that just if we were covered fully with bus monitors, just like across the system, I think that parents and families would be more confident in their children being on the bus in a least restrictive space and not needing a one-to-one monitors, because there is an adult on the bus to support their children. And because we have been significantly short across the operation, right, that confidence in the operation is not there, which is pushing a lot more of our parents and families that are demanding like one-to-one supports for their students.
Thank you. I agree with that.
There we go. I also just wanted to elevate what I've also been hearing when it comes to the engagement and communication between families and the district. Families have the ability to request an IEP meeting at any point. These IEP meetings are not happening on a consistent basis. I probably have spoken to at least 10 families this month, and it's November, I don't even know. But I've at least spoken to 10 families who have requested IEP meetings, and the district has various excuses. They have thoughts, and they want to push it back. They want to give months of February. The district is giving the families a runaround. And as the systemic improvement plan outlines, accountability is specifically outlined in the systemic improvement plan that was agreed upon in June of 2022. And accountability continues to lack. And for the families, this means that in many situations that families don't have access to their child's education. Family members, specifically parents and guardians, should be equal members of the IEP team. And when that member cannot even request and convene the team, we have a problem, and we need to be talking about that, because we also need to acknowledge who that disproportionately impacts. And that has to be looped into the conversation as well. So the Office of Special Education, I wish Lauren was present for this, but their team needs to step it up big time. Families deserve way more than what they're receiving.
Don't worry, we're going to have Lauren in our special education hearing that is happening, and you'll be on the panel again, so you could bring that heat. So I want to be super mindful of time, right? We have folks who have been patiently waiting to provide public testimony, and we also have some folks who have been waiting on Zoom. So Del, it seems like you want to say something, and you're going to have to get up and let's go, because I'm being generous.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a hard stop right now.
Okay, that's fine.
And the team, yes.
So that's, okay, that's fine, you can go. Don't worry, we appreciate the time that you spent with us. Wanted to just elevate while you're here though, that it's really important around the English language learners. And I want to just uplift a very particular group. And these are families who are undocumented. And how difficult it is for a family, and I've gotten lots of calls from folks who are undocumented, who are afraid to call BPS to find out where their child is and the emotional trauma that they experience because they're afraid that their child has been taken away or whatever the case is, and because of their status. So I just want to uplift that, so that one is at language justice and information, and the other is being super intentional of why some folks are not seeking information, and oftentimes it's because they're afraid based on their status. So I just want to name that as an area of opportunity for us to lean into, and how do we communicate to families who are undocumented that they too can call without any ramifications on their status. Just wanted to name that.
Yep, and our team is committed to working with our undocumented parents and families to provide all of the supports they need to an equitable access to education.
Thank you, thank you. So I am not one to hold people hostage for the sake of it. So we're going to open up for public testimony, and you are welcome to stay as long as, I'm sure you haven't, was this fun? Right, was it good? It didn't seem to feel like a hearing. I didn't have to do this to you all once, which you're lucky. I let you all live longer than your allotted time. But I wanted to just quickly just thank you all for bringing so much of yourself into the space, for staying as long as you did, for helping us understand what's at stake, and the work that you all are trying to do to help address the many concerns that you heard here this evening. So I'm going to open up for public testimony. I'm going to start with the people who are here. I have the list somewhere. Yeah, thank you. You guys all here for public testimony? You waited patiently. And you have a lot of really great nonverbal communication over there, so I cannot wait to hear what you have to bring into the space. And I also want to acknowledge that we have 3 folks virtually for testimony as well. So in the interest of honoring those who are here, because I know you have been waiting a long time, we're gonna start with Miss Jasmine Sadie. That's you. You go over there. You're going to state your name, your neighborhood / affiliation, and every public testimony is 2 minutes. So when you hear the alarm, that means time is up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sadie Jasmine. I am currently a bus monitor. I have been a BPS employee for 23 years. And for the past 3 years, it's been the worst management. So the issue with the buses and the bus monitors are not respected. We are treated like kids. And then the pay is horrible. Right now, we get $24.22 per run. Standby monitors get $14 and change per hour. I've always been an assigned monitor because I work as a lunch monitor at the Lee School. So I make more than the $18,000 a year. So I used to love to come to work every day. It was a joy. Now, I barely want to get out of bed due to management. They don't know how to address you. And then I was told by one of my superiors, I had got a text message last year, I can leave kids behind. BPS do not leave kids behind. You're gonna tell me you cannot pay me for extra runs, but yet you can get a raise, and I'm doing the work? It's not fair to me. We used to get paid when we did a 1-to-1, and sometimes I do a bus by myself. That requires 3 monitors. I used to get an extra run in the morning and an extra run in the afternoon. That wasn't an issue because I've been doing this for a long time, so I know how to deal with the students. Most of the students in the school district, I know them because I have worked with them. So by telling me you're not gonna compensate me for doing extra work, that's like slavery. And now we have a new contract, the contract stating $19 an hour for 8 hours. Standby $17. So you're telling me you're gonna pay me 8 hours a day at $19. What if the bus runs for 10 hours? You don't want to compensate me now, so what makes me think that you're gonna pay me exception time for being on the bus 2-3 extra hours? And as for buses being late, when the buses are late and they do send a bus, they do put a covering sign stating what bus they're covering. And also, me as a monitor, if I'm backing up a run, I will kindly get up and introduce myself and let the parent know this is the bus we're covering. And when I'm assigned, I exchange phone numbers with my parents. I let you know when the bus is running late and when it's running on time. And if I'm gonna be out, I usually don't do doctor's appointment doing work. I go to the doctors on Saturdays because I know it's an inconvenience for everyone if I'm out. So by them telling me that they're not compensating me and this, now I do my doctors any time of the day. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jasmine. Appreciate you being here. I'm gonna go to Carnell Langston. You good? She said it all for you? That's okay. I see that. Alice? Alicia? Yes. Special education.
Hello.
Good
I'm
evening.
also.
Oh, wait, we gotta wait till your mic is on, because we gotta hear you. Is on?
Y'all can hear me? I'm out big. My name is Alicia Bascom. I'm also a monitor, a bus monitor, and I'm also a lunch monitor also. The transportation system needs revamping from top to bottom. It causes a ripple effect from the lowest person to the top. What wasn't said here today was that because it's not the matter that they're short of monitors, it's the fact that they don't pay any monitors in them right. I'm on a bus right now from the Thailand school, requires 4 monitors, and I alone doing that bus by myself. Now, you talk about the budget, right? That 4 monitors is already paid for to cover that bus. But they're not willing to pay me for the 4. They intend to and tell me, just do the one that I'm assigned to and leave back the rest. That wasn't said here today. Okay? That is why it have so much people getting left back. As she said, before this management, before past time, they used to give her extra run if you cover 2 one-to-one and plus another general mother kid on the bus. They pay you 3. They pay you for the 3 of the kids. Now they're not doing that. Instead of saying, you don't have to do it, you can leave back the kid. So some of the mothers, like for me, I'm a parent also. So I don't really care that I have 4 monitor one-to-one kid on my bus. I bring everybody home because we're coming from South Boston. It's done traffic at that time at 3:30, 4 o'clock coming down the expressway. We're already running late. So just imagine if I used to leave back them other 3 kids. It's a problem for the parents to get to the school, and there's a problem for them to even get home. Try explaining to them, they brush you away. Up to yesterday, I accompanied a parent to Freeport Yard because she have a son isn't picking up things. She begging them to hire her now. She said she don't mind even getting on the bus. Nobody, she called in the call center and everything because she know I work there. I went with her. We reached there at 4:44. Everybody was gone. Not even Vasha, who was stationed in the Freeport office, was in the office. And they're supposed to be there till 7. And these are the people at the end of the year getting 5,000 and 6,000 bonuses. And we're struggling. Some of us are not on Section 8. Some of us are to pay $2,000 a month in rent. It have a lot of monitors who working for the city who are homeless. Some of us have roommates with one another. We get together and we share in a house together because our salary cannot cover it. And here you're telling us on top of it to leave back these poor innocent kids because you're not willing to pay us for it when the money is already there to pay for those kids and them. You know? And it's about who you know and who you know and who you know. They're not going to pay you out no money if you know nothing because this lady who I'm helping out here right now, she's mostly Spanish. She's not speaking English properly. Many times I hear when she called, they hang up on her. And this problem been going on with her son. She have a one-to-one son. And she's a lunch monitor. She's making $450 every 2 weeks. She can't even get money for reimbursement because when we call the center, they say they check the school. The school say they have no knowledge of how to go about paying her for the taxi or whatever she took to bring the son to school. You know, you have to treat people good. You know, if you have a good leader, you have a good staff. Because long time, a lot of monitors used to go all the way to help. For the no time they know you're short, they jump in, but now they're not doing it. And as she said, they come and they work for a little while, and when they see what is going on, they leave. They leave. But instead of the committed ones like us who've been here for more than 12 years, 13 years, and we know the system, we just here to do it because we want to do it. We have kids of our own, and especially kids, come on. Yeah. And it does have a ripple effect because I have a certain kid, he's non-verbal at the Mason school. Okay. When he misses the school on the bus, and you don't come to school for 3-4 days, it's hard to get him back into the routine. We have to start all over again with him.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, so that's my take on it. It needs a revamping of the whole system.
Yeah.
The whole system, from top to bottom.
Yeah. Lisa, you know, I'm so sorry that I have to, only because we do have people also waiting virtually.
Yeah.
The reason why I struggled with interrupting you is because it's important for us to hear.
Yeah.
And more so than anything else, we know that there is a wage discrepancy, and the people who are working the hardest are usually the least paid. And there is an opportunity for us here to really, I wouldn't even say lean into the work, but to really start thinking about how fair are we being to our workforce.
Yeah, because I leave my house at 4:30 every morning to be there on time for that bus at 5 o'clock to pull out.
Yeah.
Okay? At 4:30 every morning, I'm walking out that door. Snow, rain, whatever it is. As long as I have school, I'm there. Okay, check my attendance.
Yeah. My colleague is, we're doing things so out of
Yeah, I
order.
mean, I
Go ahead.
don't have a question. I just wanted to reaffirm what Councilor Mejia said, and I also want you to know that you have support from us.
That's right.
Yeah,
These are the conversations that we're having with the Director of Transportation, and I also want to say, for the record, that your union is doing you a great disservice. There is no way that a unionized worker in the city of Boston should be getting paid $18,000 and your union is not fighting tooth and nail for you to do that. Your union negotiates with the city. They have a responsibility to fight for you and your wages. And it is not lost on me that monitors are mostly women, they're mostly immigrants, and that you are being left to make ends meet and survive, making an average of $18,000 a year.
Yeah,
And
but
so,
I'm gonna keep in contact with you all because I'm telling you right now, I know I'm gonna be targeted after I'm here today.
No, that's okay. We got your back.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
it.
because that is also another reason why so many people are suffering in silence because they're afraid of retaliation. But what Councilor Lara is saying is that we not only hear you, but we understand in ways that we're going to work on helping to address this problem. It's not you, because what happens is that people come into this chamber and you hear a whole bunch of blah, 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 and nothing ever really happens. But now it's a new day. It's a new day. And we are here later, not later, but we took a little extra time because it was important for you to hear and to be expressed, but for us to hear you and know that we're committed to this conversation.
Yeah. I just want to let the parents and them know that they do have dedicated monitors who don't even study the money. They're still going to do it like me. I'm still going to do it. I'm not going to leave a child at all, never. You know, but then they have some monitors because of the situation. They be like, they ain't doing it because, you know. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I do not believe we have any more public testimony here, but we are going to go to the Zoom, and I just want to thank the folks that have been patiently waiting on Zoom. We have 3, from what I understand. Cheryl Buckman, who's a BPS parent, and will also be reading a testimony on behalf of another parent. Lisa Jean Graff, who lives in Fenway. Brooke McAdow, which is a BPS parent in East Boston, and Sharon Kunzun, a BPS parent. So we have 1, 2, 3, and one person is going to read a testimony from someone else. So we're going to go to Cheryl Buckman. If you are with us, you now have the floor. And you really do have 2 minutes. I keep lying, I give everybody extra time, but you were there.
Good evening, counselors. My name is Cheryl Buckman. I'm a member of BPS Families for COVID Safety, known as FAMCOSA. I am also a parent to a 4th grade child at the Paul A. Dever Elementary School in Dorchester. And I'm a hold on. Let's just make sure my computer doesn't start acting wacky. My son is also a special needs student who rides the bus daily and is door-to-door pickup. Well, we know that this is a citywide problem that is only getting worse. My son's bus has either been late, to and from school uncovered, no monitor, and without notification. This is totally unacceptable. And as a parent, I instill my faith and trust in the BPS transportation to get my son home. In 10 minutes, that's including traffic in my area. This is a 3 to 5 minute ride without traffic, 20 to 25-minute walk by foot. I've had several incidents where my son has been in harm's way on the bus. You'll see, which I have included in my exhibit, the issues that are standing in transportation. This leads me to the day that still sits in the pit of my stomach, September 23rd, 2022. I get the call and text message that no monitor was covered on his afternoon bus. I was about to see my worst nightmare happen. The bus did its normal route. Just before my stop, the bus was sitting idle at a previous stop for several moments. After a few moments, I saw my autistic son run down one of the most dangerous streets in my area. My heart sank and froze in time. I asked him what happened in his own words. "Mama, that boy kept bothering me, hitting me with his own shoes. I took it and threw it to the floor, and then he hit me twice underneath my eye with the other shoe. It sent me into a panic. I was scared, wanted off. I feared for my safety, Mama." He was visibly in tears and shaken. I immediately called his teacher, who was very concerned. The school was notified on this matter. I also called transportation and spoke to a man who had quoted that transportation is not responsible for when a child leaves the bus, no matter what the situation is and if the child has an IEP or not. I told the same dispatcher that the bus driver did not follow my son home. The dispatcher also followed this up, that saying that it was up to the school to discipline the students who were involved. My huge problem with this is it takes 5 seconds to happen. So many things could have gone wrong. So it's not okay that the driver didn't have BPS safety notified. Boston Police Dispatch, myself or the school called, and my son runs off in absolute fear from this bully. The driver did not bother asking my son why he needed to leave, just let him go. The driver then reported it later after he got back to the bus yard. How is something like this acceptable? This is my only child. I trusted BPS transportation, and now they took it and shattered that trust. The lingering question is, this could have totally been 100% preventable. I'm positive that BPS is committed to making sure that the student, the driver, and the monitor are safe during each pickup and drop-off. What transportation needs is proper protocols for when such an event like this happens. BPS needs to do better train their monitors when they're dealing with the child with special needs and those with emotional impairments. BPS also needs to have extra monitors and drivers on standby when a driver or monitor is absent. Also, BPS needs to do a better job with the GPS tracking of each bus and notify a parent in ample time when a bus is covered by another bus. I want to be sure that something like this doesn't keep happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Cheryl, just for clarity, I believe you were going to read a statement on behalf of Lisa Jean. Is that true or not? I know Lisa Jean had submitted a testimony. I think she sent a video testimony. That's what it was, Megan. Okay, so we're going to move on to Brooke. Okay, Brooke, I'm gonna set the timer. You now have the floor.
Hi, my name is Brooke Machado. I am a BPS parent of 2 children, a 7th grader at Boston Latin Academy and a 4th grader at the Dante Alighieri School. We live in East Boston, and I will let you know, I just became aware of this meeting yesterday. I didn't have a formal address prepared, but what I will do is read to you the letter that I addressed to transportation and the superintendent just 10 days ago on October 31st. And I've been on this meeting for 3 hours, and I feel sadly comforted by hearing other parents' experiences. And I think if you listen to mine, you won't hear very much that's new, but just another parent's pain with BPS transportation. So I will read. Dear Superintendent Skipper, I am a parent of 2 BPS students. Our family has been utilizing BPS buses for transportation for over 8 years, and we have encountered many years of frustration with inadequate and unreliable service. Today, I am compelled to write because the situation is worse than it ever has been. I understand you are new in your position, and BPS has many issues which need attention. But BPS transportation is failing my family, and we need help. The current matters that have subsided in the past 7 days include 6 of my child's last 11 rides have experienced grave disruptions, resulting in her late arrival to school or home and/or my spouse's late arrival to work. 8 phone calls have been made to BPS Transportation in the past 7 days seeking information about my child's bus, with little or no explanations offered. The Where's My Bus tracker has not been working consistently. Late communications from transportation about bus delays arriving up to 30 minutes after the missed pickup, if those robocalls arrive at all. Mechanical issues with buses twice, one that had no communication from BPS Transportation. Interactions when calling or chatting with transportation have included 15 to 30-minute phone and chat wait times for information, rude and dismissive call takers, and being provided questionable or false information by call takers twice. I have contacted BPS Transportation via chat, email, or phone almost daily in the last week with these problems, and this is an unacceptable use of a family's time. One day I needed to reach out for problems for both the morning and the afternoon buses. BPS Transportation remains to be completely unreliable, and when seeking help as a parent, BPS Transportation consistently leaves callers on hold unacceptably long. Agents offer no sympathy. Oh, and my document just failed on me. I went on to just close the letter to say, why did I choose to write to you after 8 years of having these issues? It's because I hear that improvements are being made and I don't see them. And, you know, one of my children, he's in the last half of his years at BPS, and he doesn't need bus transportation anymore. But I want to speak not only for my children, but like another parent mentioned here, for all of the families that don't have or don't feel like they have access to voice their concerns. So these issues are real, and I really appreciate having this forum to share them. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I was advised that Lisa Jean is available virtually to share her own testimony. So Lisa Jean, looking forward to hearing your testimony and appreciate you being here. I am going to set our little timer. You guys are good. You still got a full house here during public testimony. That's pretty impressive. Lisa Jean, if you, oh, there you are. You have 2 minutes and I'm setting it up. Go.
Hi. My name is Lisa. Hi.
You can go, my love.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Jane Graff, and I'm a parent who lives in the Fenway neighborhood. Students in the Fenway have the longest, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry, I'll start again. Sorry. My name is Lisa Jean Graff, and I'm a parent who lives in the Fenway neighborhood. Students in the Fenway have the longest bus trips on average for all neighborhoods. This is partly because special education services are not available at all schools. The closest school to our home, the Hurley, is not an inclusion school, so we didn't choose it. We chose a school that did offer inclusion, and my daughter ended up with a bus ride that was generally around 45 minutes or more each way for 9 years. Students with disabilities should have the shortest bus rides, not the longest bus rides. Long bus rides often happen because needed services are not available near a student's home. The district is making a commitment to offering more services at more schools, and I want to see a timeline for this work at each school. In addition, parents need to know their rights. Looking back, I could have chosen the Hurley for my daughter as another option for the least restrictive environment. More parents choosing general education placements for their children with IEPs and 504 plans can, in effect, create more inclusion classrooms. My first recommendation is that neighborhoods that have an extremely long amount of bus rides have schools available within a reasonable distance, especially offering a full range of special education services. Not all neighborhoods have elementary schools, and by only placing schools where there is a high population, it has the unintended consequence of lowering family-aged populations in those neighborhoods. All neighborhoods should be welcoming to individuals at all times in their lives. In 2017, I took part in a hackathon around BPS transportation called the Transportation Challenge. The two areas that were focused on were more efficient bus routes and school start times. My daughter and I worked on school start times and were eliminated from the challenge after the first round. I updated my proposal a number of times over the years to be reflective of parent feedback. My second recommendation is that the district revisit school start times as another way to improve BPS transportation. My proposal can be considered by the district and through community engagement. My third recommendation is around the transportation contract. Boston can move in the direction of Worcester and Brockton and take over the bus fleet. One of the biggest gains from this change would be the ability to offer higher bus driver and bus monitor salaries, making it easier to keep experienced and dedicated staff. Another possibility might be for the current bus drivers to be supported in creating a bus driver cooperative that would include staff with extensive routing experience. My fourth recommendation is that in the short term, the district offers an Uber account for families who need same-day transportation service for their child that would be activated by adding their child's school ID number before a trip or for reimbursement after a trip. This could speed up payment to families so that current staffing challenges will have less financial impact on families. For families that provide transportation themselves, there could be a fund to compensate families for their travel costs that not only take into account travel expenses, but also lost time. Another possibility would be for the district to proactively look at transportation records to see what buses didn't run on time or missed routes and mail a debit card to families directly who have not already been reimbursed for their transportation expenses. This would be a more equitable way to reimburse families and rebuild trusted families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa, for being so thoughtful and being such a great problem solver. I'm hoping that BPS will also tune into the public testimony portion and consider some of your ideas. So thank you so much. Thank you. Going to now move on to Sharon. I believe you are the last one lined up. Thank you, Lisa. It's good to see you. Keep it up. Sharon.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Hi.
Yes.
For the opportunity to testify, and thank you for bringing this forward. I also just learned about this meeting last night. I was actually in a family council meeting for the Rafael Hernandez School, which my children attend. And one of the things we were talking about was the problems that so many parents there many of whom have Spanish as their native language, have been facing with the bus. And a lot of what I've heard here tonight was also borne out on that call. And I volunteered to come virtually and kind of speak on behalf of others who, maybe didn't have the bandwidth or the opportunity to do that on short notice. But things like being hung up on when they've called to try to express concerns with the bus. One mom was told that we can't understand you need to learn to speak English, and hung up on, which obviously is completely unacceptable. One of the most tragic cases that Family Liaison was actually in tears telling us this. There was a little boy who had been on the wait list for the Hernandez for several years, actually, and he finally got a spot and he had started. But his bus was so consistently late that his mom was at risk of losing her job. And ultimately, she pulled him from the school in favor of a local school. So his family is Spanish speaking, and he lost the opportunity to have an education at the Hernandez that he was entitled to because he wasn't being brought there on time. The last thing that I want to mention that hasn't come up is the afternoon bus. There are a couple of buses at the Hernandez in particular that are consistently, dismissal is at 3:10 and they're consistently arriving closer to 4. It's like 40 kids, which puts a huge strain on an already quite taxed staff having to figure out what to do with these 40 kids who were dismissed 40 minutes before their bus is coming. So this really is an issue that is impacting the Spanish language community as well. And I'm maybe not the best representative of that community, but I'm who was available. So I appreciate your hearing this, and hopefully there'll be more opportunities for more voices to testify.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I think speaking on behalf of those who can't be here is part of our collective work together, so we really do appreciate you taking the time to amplify the voices of those who couldn't be here, but also bringing yourself into that space. And I'm glad that during your parent council meeting that the information was shared, so that you can go on the record and let us know what we need to do more of and better. So thank you for being here. There will be more hearings, and I think BPS has an opportunity to make sure that all parent councils, CPC in particular, which is the citywide parent council space, has access to all of our hearings so that you guys don't have to hear about this the day before. I think that is a really great opportunity for BPS to be more of a partner in this process with us, because we could only just reach as many people as we can through our social media platform and through our collective work with nonprofit organizations. But BPS, in good faith, would have been a great idea for them to share this public hearing order 2 weeks ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, when we had already booked it. So then that would have given parents enough time to organize to either be here or sign up virtually. So this is an area of growth, and I'm glad that you brought it up here today, because that is going to be my expectation for the next series of hearings that we have, that BPS will share our information with all of their parents. So thank you.
Thank you. I so appreciate your leadership on this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I do not believe we have any more public testimony, but I did want to ask Siri, since you stayed here as long as you did, and Jakari, if you wanted to have any final closing statements. Normally we don't do that, but I feel like I'm not here to do normal. So wanted to ask you if you wanted to share any closing remarks.
Yeah, well, first, thank you to the leadership of all of you on this committee, and thank you, Councilor Mejia, for responding in about 15 minutes to my email, which was serendipitous since you were planning this hearing. I guess one thing I didn't have a chance to mention earlier that came to me during some of the testimonials is just the level of discouragement that BPS employees within the Haley feel towards solving this. When I told some staff that I knew a few counselors because of my electoral involvement, they were like, please contact them because you have much more power than we do. No one will answer our calls. And another thing I wanted to mention is that one of the staff members at my son's school, when I asked for her advice on how to solve this problem, she said, I wouldn't complain too much about it because you might lose your bus option altogether if you're too loud about it. Luckily, we're a family that, like, we could bring our son to and from school if we need to. We have that flexibility, and because of that, I was like, well, this makes me want to fight even more if this is the feeling that people have. So, yeah, thank you for highlighting all these issues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. To conclude, I just want to again thank you for inviting me and for holding this hearing. I'm very excited, and it was, a privilege being able to hear from those directly impacted. I also just want to share, I think it's great that the district showed up and they were present. The presentation was cute, but we need action, we need change. We don't need any more data. I don't trust it personally. We have an issue with data and accountability as a systemic improvement plan outlines. We need action. That's right. We don't need any more cute presentations. Looks great, but what is the impact for families? And if that's not what we're talking about, then I don't want to participate in that discussion.
Yes.
Period.
I hope they put that on rewind, because I have been, since I've been on this council, have been pushing BPS in particular, that I do not do well under PowerPoints, because I feel like it occupies time and space when we could really have meaningful conversations. So I'm not interested in any more PowerPoints, and they know that. And so that's why it was a little bit shorter. But I want to get to a point where we don't come here with a dog and pony show, which is what it feels like when you get a whole bunch of numbers and data, and it just is confusing for a lot of folks. I just want to know, here's the problem, here's what we plan to do, here's where we're falling short, here's where we need some help in, and let me acknowledge that we're taking responsibility and accountability in this area. People don't want to hear, anything other than, what are you going to do to fix this problem?
Absolutely.
And I feel PowerPoints don't get us there. Action and deliverables and timelines by when, and how are you going to measure that success?
And changed outcomes. We've been talking about compensatory services for years. Families are not being notified. We need to stop gaslighting families and be real about what's happening.
That's right. That's right. Girl, you're coming back for the next round of hearings. But I wanted to give my colleague, Councillor Murphy, if you have any closing remarks that you want to share.
Thank you, everyone who stayed with us, and thank you for sharing your stories working in schools. And I do want to say that they do these PowerPoints, and it happened during the budget season also, and it would happen as a BPS teacher during training. So it definitely, for me, I always feel like, one, it's information we have access to. We can Google. Their website has the information they're sharing. But there is always this feeling, and it came out of the DESI report also, that, and you talked about it as teachers telling you, the data isn't being shared. It's not, and the reason why, though, is that at every level, from the bus monitors to the classroom teachers to the secretary to the principal to the regional superintendents, all the way up the line, are afraid to share it because they're reprimanded. And you said, oh, your son might lose their bus. And teachers often feel, and we had a hearing on sexual harassment in schools, sexual assaults. Councilor Mahir and I were sitting in these same chairs, and they came with a PowerPoint and then had no data on how many assaults had been reported, right? So the conversation definitely needs to shift. We had a hearing, Councilor Flaherty and I, a couple weeks ago, as we gave, not commissioner, but the superintendent Skipper a couple weeks to settle in. She came to the hearing. It was a great conversation, but we also said then, we have to see real action for that trust to be built, and we have to see things moving. And the PowerPoints also talk in percentages. What does 35% mean? When it's a $1.4 billion budget and you're saying it's a certain percentage, or we're talking about thousands of students every day being left at bus stops, missed, not picked up, disrupted education in a system that is already not delivering a consistent education for all of our students across the board. So this is the beginning of the conversation. I know we will continue to have that. And I do appreciate that a lot of the language access was brought into this conversation, special ed access, because it's all connected. So looking forward to having that conversation about the next time when we're talking about special ed or if we're talking about safety in our schools. It's all connected. And before I close, I do want to thank our central staff, Megan, and thank you for being here. I know it's late. Ethan, who's keeping our cameras rolling, thank you for always staying late and accommodating us. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And you already know how I feel, so lots of love and thank you to everyone. So I'm just going to be really brief. I don't want to occupy space, but that's why in June we filed 3 very different set of hearings, one on BPS transportation, one on English language learners, and one on special education. Because we knew, and I filed them under the government accountability and transparency, because that changes the conversation. And so for us, as we continue to move through this work, people are tired of being tired. And we just get a lot of lip service and people say really cute things and they show up. But we need more than that at this point. We need to deliver for our families in ways that they haven't seen. And I'm really hopeful though, because we have a new administration, we have a new superintendent, we have an opportunity to really level set in a way that will deliver results for families. But we have to remain hopeful and assume best intentions and create space for families to really drive the conversation. I'm a BPS graduate. My mom didn't make it beyond 3rd grade. I'm still the official translator for my family. So these things are not just hypothetical, these things are lived for many of us. And so because we've lived it, we know how frustrating it is to be on the other side. My mom is a low-wage worker. She's 73 years old and still too poor to retire. We know the story. And because of that, that's where I believe the opportunity lies for us to do things differently, not just talk about it, but actually do something about it, which is what real change is all about. So thank you all for being here and giving so much of yourself this evening. This hearing is adjourned. We're going to keep it in committee, and we're going to We're going to convene. Thank you. Thank you.